Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Connor. I am a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran. I am a never Trump Republican. There are two characters, actually three, that we're going to be breaking down today. Drew Pavlou is a militant liberal. He's a gentleman that I see 70% eye to eye on. I, as a never Trump Republican who believes in liberalism, capital L, the political philosophy. However, I don't think it's enough for culture. So I have some fiscal conservative and social conservative sentiments. That's where we don't necessarily line up. Now, we are watching Hasan Piker, the most popular leftist political streamer on the planet, gets tens of thousands of live viewers, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of post-recorded views, and then a schizophrenic attack dog named BadEmpanada, whom he has previously tried to run away from in reference to association. They are obviously members of the left, and we, as a part of the anti-Trump coalition, we don't like to punch people rhetorically who are trying to be in that never Trump coalition. But at the same time, this is the most nefarious aspects of the left that turn off a bunch of people from voting Democratic, from associating with Democrats, because they sweep for these kind of schizophrenic, hyperbolic, zealot jerks. And so without further ado, let's get these schizophrenic, zealot jerks on your screen, and let's see what they have to say about politics in the modern era.
No, sorry, episode 36 of the Drew Pavlou Show. Today, I'm going to be watching live as BadEmpanada and Hasan Piker, have a nice, lovely chin wag together. It's actually pretty sickening. There's probably a new low, I think, for
the Yemeni one does. I didn't even look at him. He's hotter than the Palestinian token, I'll be honest.
The Palestinian token guy, oh my God, he's I don't know if I have a video on where I cover him, but his story, it's incredibly sad, and then it's also pathetic.
Oh, they're attacking John.
He lost like 20 family members in Gaza during the war.
Oh, talking about Ahmed for him.
And he weaponizes that to do pro-Israel propaganda. He's like, I don't blame Israel for this. I blame Hamas. Blah 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 blah. Oh my God, it's so pathetic and disgusting.
I mean, no one
initially thought.
No one will touch.
I initially thought he could be saved, but I was wrong. Son of Hamas is just a joke.
I mean, he's
honestly.
a Mossad operative, isn't he?
No. His story is way funnier. Okay, he was a Mossad operative. He wasn't a Mossad operative. He was a Shin Bet operative.
Oh yeah, Shin Bet.
So in the West Bank, and he ended up he had to leave the West Bank for his own safety, obviously, because he was a Shin Bet operative, and the Israelis did not help him. The Israelis did not let him enter Israel because he's a Palestinian. He's still a Palestinian. So he had to go to the US and beg for refugee status. He was initially denied refugee status until the Israelis shipped over a bunch of former Shin Bet members to testify that he was a great servant to Israel. And then they gave him refugee status. So he worked for Israel. He sold his soul. He sold his soul for Israel, and he still was not allowed in Israel. He had to go to the US.
Is he now allowed in Israel at least?
I don't think he's ever been to Israel, as far as I know.
No.
He went straight from Palestine to the U.S.
No. That motherfucker.
He might have been, I'm not sure, but bro, they did not let him live there.
No way. He must be. Because, dude, I feel like I've seen him on Israeli television.
He lives in the U.S. He usually is on video link and stuff, but he speaks at, he does the tour, the speaking tour in U.S. universities is how he makes his money, most of it. And he might have visited Israel, but he's not allowed to live there.
Bro, he's such a nasty little fucking freak, dude. I hate him. He is the worst of the worst. He's such
the thing, at least
scumbag.
he's so bad that he's so bad and obvious that he's easy to ignore, I feel, because it's most people will discard him out of hand unless they're already Zionists.
Well, also because half of the people are going to be like, you're Muslim, I don't care about you. So there's that too. Yeah. But no, it's my favorite Zionist is Rabbi Shmuley, because I think he's basically creating anti-Zionists everywhere he goes. You could have motherfuckers who are listen, I went to Jewish camp. I grew up loving Israel, and then the one time that they stand next to Rabbi Shmuley, they're like, I'm done. I'm over. We as the dismantle.
I don't know anything about it. I mean, I've mostly heard him because I've seen anti-Semites talk about how much they hate him. So you're anti-Semitic by association. I'm sorry.
No. I think that he is not he's gross, but I don't think he's he doesn't anger me. I think it's funny is what I'm saying.
He went on Piers Morgan and said on.
So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that they're talking about, because I don't just want to listen to what these guys are talking about. I actually want to understand what they're talking about. The Israeli security agency, also known as Shin Bet, General Security Service in Arabic, better known by the acronym Shabak or Shin Bet, is Israel's internal security service. Its motto is Magen Vlo Yahara, the unseen shield. The Shin Bet's headquarters are located in northwest Tel Aviv, north of Yakin Park. It is one of three principal organizations of the Israeli intelligence community, alongside with the Amman military intelligence and Mossad foreign intelligence service. So this would be domestic intelligence, I guess. So the CIA and FBI, although the FBI is technically law enforcement, what is America's domestic intelligence agency? Is the FBI. So that's what I was wondering, because the FBI is kind of, it's law enforcement, but it's also domestic intelligence gathering, where they go after domestic terrorist organizations as well. So the differentiation between Mossad, which is what Hasan accused Mosab Yousef of being, versus Shin Bet, that's a distinction that allows them, in my opinion, for BadEmpanada to kind of seem like he knows more about the actual nitty-gritty details of what's going on. Can we even count the lies? I mean, we'll try. I haven't, I don't think that viewing somebody negatively like Mosab Yousef, apparently somebody who was born and raised in the West Bank, but who collaborated with Israeli authorities, I don't view them viewing him badly as a lie. It could be something that we're hostile to, ultimately, depending on how good of a dude Mosab Yousef is. But I think it's just worth knowing the details of. Bull Media says, and you can't find someone who was in the more thick of it than him. If you're talking about Mosab Yousef, that's dope. Gen X says, yo, had to finish watching Caroline lie to the press. Sorry I'm late. No problems. Welcome aboard. Mr. Bombastic says, shit bet. I said it wrong. Shin Bet is internal secret police. Mossad is external. Yep, there we go. Shin Bet is civilian intelligence, while Israeli is military. Yep. Connor, you should cover some Mosab Yousef. He is unhinged, but so brutally honest in his delivery. It's actually refreshing. Yeah, if we have an excuse to do so, we will. But effectively, so far, all we have is BadEmpanada and Hasan Piker talking smack about Mosab Yousef. And I think they moved on to Rabbi Shmuley, who I am unfamiliar with. But in my opinion, no offense, Rabbi Shmuley, but he effectively has, if there was a PBS Kids Muppets style character who talked about Judaism, I would expect his name to be Rabbi Shmuley. So that's kind of a crazy name. Then Mr. Bombastic says, Shin Bet are actually based sometimes, as far as I know. One of their ex-chiefs wants to politically empower Palestinians for the sake of national security. Well, and that's actually something that the FBI does as well, right? Oftentimes they work with a lot of domestic local recruits for intel operations. And so as a result, they kind of maintain the balance of power between criminal organizations and the civilians within those communities, because they basically give the civilians someone to call in order to enforce, political reality as far as criminality goes. So that's pretty dope. Anyways, quick chill time. Like the stream, become a YouTube member if you're not already, become a Twitch member, although I don't think we have Twitch up yet. And then also super chat if you got it. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. I get it. Let's go.
On October 7th, there was 400 bloody breasts that were cut off of women.
Yeah, and they played
stuff
soccer.
like that. They played.
He said they chopped
kicked
off
them around
Jewish
like
women's
footballs.
breasts and played soccer with them.
400 of them as well.
Man, that's where Ethan Klein gets all the shit that he makes up about himself from Israel. It's like they mail me the skulls and they cut off the boobs.
Right now.
It's the same sort of shit.
Insane anti-Semitism.
I don't understand what any of that. See, that's the other thing. Like, I don't give a fuck about the drama stuff that happens to Ethan at all. So, like, that was also really weird when he was like trying to fucking pin this shit on me. And I was like, did you ever get evidence that like someone called CPS? And he was like, no.
That's another thing. Like, I have not seen him provide any evidence that it even happened. And we're talking about the CPS shit. They're going to be so angry about it. I don't know. I'm not going to take anything this guy says at face value. He doesn't deserve that. given the shit that he says about other people and given the fact that he just makes shit up all the time. But
I
like,
just don't understand how this is like pinned on whoever the fuck
Well,
he
you talk about
seemingly
him.
is beefing with. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean,
Sorry, I need to add context for why this is actually really messed up. So, number one, let's address the 400 bloody breasts that they played soccer with. Okay, so this is where lying in propaganda is actually bad for you. Okay, so when it came to early reporting during the October 7, 2023 massacre, there were the stories like 50 beheaded babies and 400 bloody breasts being, cut off and played with soccer, right? And so what ends up happening is because the numbers are so exaggerated, even if the details aren't. Let's say that there's one child under the age of 5 who was beheaded. Let's say that there was one woman who got their breast cut off and the Hamas fighters are on CCTV kicking it around. Well, without the substantiation via photographic evidence or video evidence, which is already so horrific that kind of asking for it makes you like a psycho, but without it being substantiated either via pictures or video, what's going to happen is if those claims are exaggerated either in number or severity, then people like this get to feign outrage that the October 7, 2023 massacre was exaggerated in order to attack Palestinians. Whereas if we look at what actually happened on October 7, 2023, it's already bad enough. 900 civilians were murdered. We know this. There's video evidence of this. Hamas and Palestinians posted pictures and videos of them executing people and of them beating corpses in the street. That's already bad enough. So my advice to anyone who is playing the power game or the politics game, who's thinking about lying for effect, don't do it. It's a slippery slope and it hands ammunition to your enemies. So don't do it. Christian Blair says, Drew left the West Bank to travel to America. Drew left the West Bank to travel to America, but ended up in Australia. It would be nice to see Drew not cover this like Hasan's chair stream. Well, I don't mind if he does do the chair stream effectively, because that's going to give us more of an opportunity to engage with the regular content. Whereas if he goes on 5-minute rants and I go on 5-minute rants, we're going to drag out the content substantively. So I actually appreciate Drew pulling up this stream and kind of letting it flow. Now, bringing up the context for why them minimizing their harassment of Ethan Klein is so funny, or ironic, or dark, or terrible, is that BadEmpanada is the original person who found a clip of Ethan Klein, who is a Jewish podcaster who used to be friends with Hasan Piker, who had a falling out over Israel-Palestine. He found a clip saying that a puppy that they just brought into their house had diarrhea, that some of the family members inside the house got diarrhea, and so they suspected that there was a disease that was going around the household getting everybody sick. And so as a result, BadEmpanada is the psycho who took that 5 to 10 minute clip, which is gross, by the way, but then blew it up into the housekeeper got fired recently and is suing the Kleins. That's true. Everyone is getting sick from a diuretic disease, which shows that Ethan Klein is being neglectful of his children. Therefore, they're contracting diseases previously unknown to men. Like unknown to science, right? That's almost a direct quote. It's a hyperbolic quote. It could be viewed as a joke, but that's the way that he framed this entire thing. Well, Denims, who is a Hasan Piker waiting room with, hundreds of viewers, she watched it uncritically, and then within a week, Child Protective Services was called and sent to Ethan Klein's house, effectively harassing him via schizophrenic pro-Palestinian people who were accusing him of abusing his children. And so Hasan Piker acting like, oh, well, you didn't even get the report. Even if you get a report, CPS is oftentimes anonymous. So as a complainant, you can be anonymous. That way people are more likely to report them. And then BadEmpanada is the person who wanted this result. So him being like, oh, we're all trying to find the guy who did this. It's like, dude, you're the guy who did this. We know you're the guy who did this. And as a part of this harassment campaign against Ethan Klein, another thing that happened was people bought 2 human skulls from a cadaver website, sent it to Ethan Klein's house, and BadEmpanada, he was lying probably, but he claimed responsibility on Instagram. So he's talking smack about like, well, I don't believe what this guy says. He makes stuff up all the time. BadEmpanada also makes stuff up all the time. So the fact that Hasan Piker is platforming him and talking to him in a chill way is the exact kind of harassment that Ethan Klein was complaining about. It's wild. Corey Peltzman says, if I have to choose between 1.6 billion Muslims and a cow, I will choose a cow. Mosab, Hasan, Yousef. Yeah, that's probably racist or messed up. That's the guy that they were talking about. I wonder if Hasan would ask him if Ethan's kid should be taken away. Yeah, he's not going to. It's going to be totally softball. Conservative liberalism says the decapitated blah, blah, blah thing was damning because our POTUS said he saw evidence of it. Somehow people still wonder why trust in institutions are at all-time lows. Yeah. And if you're going to claim something so horrific, then you need to substantiate it, right? A lot of the lies were the first propagated by right-wing pro-settler Israelis. Yep. Makes sense, and I expect lies in the fog of war. That's true. What I don't expect is POTUS to blow smoke up my butt. True. Bull Media says, will CNN approach BadEmpanada? Oh boy, yeah. Will The Daily Show do a softball interview with BadEmpanada? You know? We're over here talking about how, you know, Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay are talking about how do we segregate the schizophrenic grifter woke right, and on the left we got, you know, Hasan Piker platforming BadEmpanada, who's one of the most psychotic pieces of garbage in social media, and Hasan Piker just got a NBC segment and he got a Daily Show segment. We have to call this out. Okay, Corey Peltzman says it's a religion, lol. Okay, instead of racism, replace what racism with ethno-religious bigotry. Okay, it doesn't roll off the tongue the way that racism does. Last comment, we'll get back into the content. Christian Blair says, there's so much misinformation, disinformation regarding the atrocities. Pretty sure there was a child that may have been something, but a lot of lefties said the image was shared by Shapiro was AI. I also don't trust Ben Shapiro. Yeah. So we should not do that. So Corey Peltzman, Islam is not an ethno. Yeah, yes it is. Okay, so Islam might not be ethnic. I agree, because Islam includes Malaysians, Tuaregs, Bedouins, Arabs, Pashto, Hazaras, Persians, Moroccans, you know, whatever. But then Islam is associated with the Middle East and North Africa. So if you want to split hairs, go ahead. But you know what I'm saying. You're just being a pedant. So if you're going to be a pedant, at least super chat me in order to be a pedant. I tip my hat to any Muslims with the stories to be an apostate. Yeah, I mean, like, being an apostate and Islam is tough because people effectively call for your death on social media every single day. Yeah. Well, and then, of course, yeah, there's white Muslims too. All right. Anyways, you guys are being distracting. Let's continue. I love you.
And he's someone who was backed into a corner. I feel like he knows deep down that he can't, you know, he's defending something that is indefensible. And when you're in that situation, you scream victim, you know, and that's what he's been doing. Even if the CPS call did happen, like, creating a victim narrative out of that is insane. It's just like a little checkup on your kids for a day or two. Like, give me a fucking break, dude. He treats it like he was raided by SEAL Team 6 and the concubine guy took his kids to be like his janissary or something. The concubine guy, if you don't know, is the guy who...
Hello,
the guy, one of the... SEAL Team 6 the one who killed...
Yeah, I heard about the Joe Biden's
yeah. I'm going to pretend they are.
But I'm watching
but one of them...
Listen, we're watching the
Hasan, like a bunch of twinks on Twitter that without social media...
Yeah. You're talking about Mick Booyah.
That's my reference, yeah. So he's treating it like that guy came in with SEAL Team 6 and kidnapped his kids to be his fucking concubine or something, okay? That is the narrative that Ethan Klein is going with here. It sounds like he got swatted, basically. And, dude, it's just a visit from CPS. Should someone have called him on you? Like a random viewer? No, you shouldn't give a fuck about this guy and his kids enough to do that. But, like, he's treating it like he's he's been victimized in a fucking absurd way. And it's not what happened at all. And he's been doing this more and more and more. He's a victim of harassment. Everyone's harassing him. People called Hila a terrorist. There's no discussion of whether, by his own definition, she merits that label or not, which is, by the way, how I got involved in this in the first place, because I saw what he was saying about Rashid, and it fucking offended me that he sees a, like, Arab teenager when, by his own logic, his wife fits that definition that he was using. So, you know, think a little bit before you say dumb shit.
Luckily, this fucking CPS agent certified, you know, CPS, or not CPS, sorry, Customs and Border Patrol, CBP agent certified, Rashid al-Haddad vindicated. The American government's official position is that Rashid al-Haddad is not a Houthi. Okay, I think we could put the bed these claims, because I would otherwise be in jail right now, I guess, and be a precedent-setting legal case that undermines free press and free speech in this goddamn country.
Yeah, dude, he's definitely free press.
Yeah, I mean, and then are the Houthis terrorists aside from the definition? You don't comment because they might arrest you. In my opinion, they are not. Because
I told him that. I did tell him that. I was like, I think.
Oh, you shouldn't have done that. That's a bad idea.
No, I know. I told him I did like the softest approach. I was like, I'm of the mindset of the Brookings Institute when they wrote a report in 2020 that Donald Trump's assessment on his way out of the administration to declare the Houthis a terrorist organization was actually quite problematic, because it actually rendered aid. It stopped the rendering of aid, and it actually had zero impact.
Dude, that's
on
so
the Houthis
bullshit, because it's actually the Houthis who have weaponized aid in Yemen. They've actually laid an entire town called Taiz to siege for more than 5 years now. Hundreds of thousands of civilians denied water and food because of what the Houthis have done.
Would even be talking about them. Like, I don't know enough about what the Houthis have done aside from that to say that they haven't committed terrorism.
Good comment by Free October. If these guys ever had power, we would all be in a fucking concentration camp. Like,
Drew's not wrong. So let's break this down a bit further, okay? So BadEmpanada says, effectively, why are you freaking out about a CPS visit? Weirdly enough, this is my perspective. So, former law enforcement, I understand it absolutely can be terrifying to get a visit from the state, to have the state talking to you, all that kind of stuff, because oftentimes, state figures, Transportation Security Administration, CBP in Hasan's case, CPS in Ethan's case, when you're getting asked questions by the state and it feels like your answers can put you in jail, even if you did nothing wrong, there's still the pressure of it being a high stakes conversation. And so that can give you anxiety, that can freak you out, right? So I think that Ethan Klein is correct to say that he was harassed using Child Protective Services, and therefore Hasan platforming the guy who instigated that is pretty messed up. I think Ethan Klein is perfectly within his rights to be offended, upset that his former friend is talking to the schizophrenic who got him in trouble with the state. Now, what's ironic and funny about this statement is that Hasan then highlights his own detention by Customs and Border Patrol, because Hasan was traveling. I think he went to France for his mom's birthday, and then he went to Chicago for a speech at the University of Chicago. The fact that this guy gets any speaking engagements at any mainstream institution, I think, is insane. But that's what happened. And then CBP, when they were checking him back into the country, they detained him temporarily in order to ask him some questions about his behavior. And by the way, if somebody who publicly sympathizes with terrorist organizations travels out of the country and then returns, that's exactly who I want Customs and Border Patrol to talk to and kind of grill about who they are, what they're doing, who they associate with, what they believe, and what they're about to go do. 100%, that's exactly who I want to get grilled by CBP. So when it comes to Ethan, he's not allowed to be upset. When it comes to Hasan, he's perfectly within his rights to be upset. And then now they're going into how the Houthis aren't a terrorist organization. So just as a preemptive thing, let's go ahead and just pull this up real quick. I'll be very brief because obviously large segments of my chat have already seen me break this down before. But right here is the Suez Canal. It's one of the most important trade routes in the world. And down here is, I think, the Gulf of Aden. This is Yemen. It's taken over by the Houthi, the Al-Houthi family, is what Hasan would say. They are allies of the largely Shia Islamic sect that's based out of Iran. And so Iran is giving missiles and drones and weapons to the Houthis who currently rule large swaths of Yemen. And they're attacking random commercial shipping vessels. I think they've attacked around like 65 to 70 vessels, causing minor damage to those vessels. They've boarded and abducted, 2 or 3 ships. I would have to check the exact stats. They've killed 3 Filipino sailors. They've interrupted international trade, and a substantive amount of international trade is now traveling around the entire Horn of Africa, or excuse me, the Horn is right here. They're traveling around the Cape of Good Hope or something. I forget what this is called. But Cape Town, they're traveling around here, which is costing the international community billions, if not trillions of dollars. Now, the alleged motivation of this is the Houthis are trying to stop the ongoing potential ethnic cleansing happening in Gaza by Israel on the Gazan Palestinian population. But all they're doing is they're being terrorist a-holes. And so people like BadEmpanada, people like Hasan Piker, people like that one idiot that he keeps, Norm Finkelstein, they all say, yeah, this is based. They say shooting missiles into random commercial vessels is based. They said accidentally killing or intentionally killing 3 Filipino sailors is based. They said kidnapping people for the better part of a year is based. And so it's just endorsing terrorism. That's what's going on. That's what's going on your stream. This is one of the biggest streamers on Twitch right now, endorsing terrorism. In case you were worried, in case you were concerned. Checking in with chat real quick. Christian Blair says, if Wiki is accurate, Pavlou was born in 1999. Pavlou's family, who are Greek Cypriots from the Lamaka district of Cyprus, migrated to Australia in the 60s to an open number of hospitality. Okay. Yeah, Pavlou's based. I like Pavlou. Bull Media says, I wonder if Hamas did an attack and the IDF would just investigate. Then does that also make them terrorists? Because that was Gila and nearly all Israelis doing service. What? I'm not quite sure what the point you're making is, Bull Medias. Corey Peltzman says, people who protect Islam and call people who criticize it racist are dullards. Okay, so Corey, I don't think that you should be bigoted towards people from the Middle East and North Africa, because there's plenty of cool people who are from the Middle East and North Africa, even if they're Muslim. I don't think you should be bigoted to Muslims, because in Islam, there's a fairly chill interpretation, which is believe in God, the last day, do good works, and say the proclamation of faith, which is that there is no God but God and Muhammad is his messenger, right? That's like the 4 or 5 necessary prerequisites for you to be considered Muslim, is be a monotheist who believes that the world will end one time and that Muhammad is one of God's messengers, right? And do good works. And so if you take that fairly chill interpretation, then lots of people can be really cool, nice, kind, productive members of society who do, you know, who are chill, who are cool, who are people you should hang out with. Now, that being said, you can also interpret Islam to be, there will not be peace until the entire world is unified under Islam. There's a natural hierarchy to the world where Jews and Christians have to pay deference to Islam because Islam is a true religion and Christianity is an Abrahamic heresy and Judaism is a closed religion that has lost favor with God. Like you can make like more aggressive militant interpretations of Islam, but if you do that, then you're effectively guaranteeing militant conflict between you and jihadists. So I personally would like to not be bigoted against people from different ethnic backgrounds, and I would like to not be bigoted against people from a different religious background. So hopefully we can be chill. 10% of global trade passes through there. That might be total global trade, but I was pretty sure that the Trump admin said that 40% of European trade passes through the Suez. And it might be 40% of commercial shipping trade. Like if you make it more specific. The idea that Houthis do this out of solidarity is the most blatant lie, and you must be severely arsered to believe it. Well, they could be doing it out of some level of solidarity, but they also, you know, they also could just be a-holes, right? Those aren't mutually exclusive positions. Anyways, subgroups of Islam are ethno-religious, not Islam as a whole. Okay, dude, I've repeated myself 3 times now, Corey. Did you hear what I said about it, or are you acting disingenuous? Corey, this is your final warning, okay? This is my stream. If I'm articulating that there are differences between ethnicity, race, religion, and I make that differentiation, and then you say, oh, well, here's a nuance of it, you must agree with me or you're being disingenuous, then you're an internet schizophrenic and I don't need you in my chat, okay? Engage with the content. You're not the only person in my chat. There's 50 people here besides you. Okay, so if I'm 99% accurate and you think you're 100% accurate, and then you're being schizophrenic about the 1% difference, I don't want to distract from the rest of chat in order to deal with you. Okay? Is that fair? Excuse me. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for freaking out, but I just get triggered by people who get mad at people criticizing Islam and call them racist. Sorry. No, I'm being a little bit too schizo. It's not necessarily you. It could be because I'm getting frustrated with these guys in the way that they're talking, so I'm sorry for freaking out. But I also got a show to run, so I can't just deal with you. Okay? So my apologies if I seemed a little too crazy about it, but anyways. That being said, like the stream if you haven't liked it already. Follow if you're not following. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Super chat if you feel like it. Let's go.
This is how sick these guys are.
Attacks, you know, and people just harp on that. Like, if this guy was actually Houthi, if he had actually helped to hijack ships, good on him.
That's sick.
Yeah,
man.
this is the thing, like, that I tried to explain to everyone that doesn't listen, because I think that they care more about like a gotcha in their minds. But I was like, I don't care if he's a fucking Houthi, dude. I thought he was before I interviewed him. He has no reason to fucking lie to me. He said he's not a Houthi, and then we moved on to other shit. Like, but even if he was a fucking Houthi, it's not going to stop me from interviewing him. And I've stressed this so many fucking times, and people literally don't understand. They're like, nah, we got you, bro. You admitted he was a Houthi, and then you lied and you said he wasn't because you're scared. And it's like, no, I'm not. I think it's my constitutionally protected right as an American citizen to actually fucking conduct an interview with a member of the Ansar-Allah administration if I fucking want to.
Fuck off.
I will have a Al Houthi family member if I want to. Like, what the fuck are we talking about?
I saw some of the slop tubers set up the argument that you shouldn't have done that by saying, like, well, you know, Osama bin Laden was interviewed, and that's not necessarily something that, you know, shouldn't be allowed to happen. But in Hasan's case, it's actually different for actually no reason at all, just because.
No, the reason is because they say Hasan glazed them. He asked them about fucking One Piece and shit.
You talked
That's
about
what it is, where they're so stupid. It's like,
they didn't talk about anime with Osama.
I asked a 19-year-old Yemeni teenager who, even if he was a part of the fucking Houthi movement, I would not consider to be like an enemy of America, or even if he was an enemy.
Even though they're fucking attacking civilian shipping, which is a war crime. They're literally guys, they're actually supporting war crimes on the stream right now.
What are they supposed to love us? Like, we did a fucking man-made blockade that created massive famine in the goddamn country. And we weren't even brave enough to do it ourselves. We let the fucking Saudis do it with our goddamn weapons and our fucking Air Force and our munitions. It was Boeing rockets that blew up the goddamn school bus in fucking Sanaa and shit. And oh my God, I can't believe they're walking over the Israeli and the American flag. Like, suck my dick, dude. They can do whatever the fuck they want with the American flag and the Israeli flag. I wipe my ass with the American flag.
I hate this guy. I hate him so much. Conservative liberalism says, I sympathize with your point, Corey Peltzman. Will be nice since I freaked out. For what it's worth, people do carry the racism shield to defend Islam, and it can be frustrating. I'm going to be super critical of the religion. No axe to grind with the people. And guys, if you want to be a little bit more edgy or anti-Islam, I'm not going to like freak out on you individually. But I think that you freaking out is counterproductive. So if you mean, like, I have a guy named Gassim in my chat. He's Sudanese. He's Muslim. He's got plenty of Muslim friends. His family's Muslim, et cetera, et cetera. He's a brilliant man from Sudan. He's very cool. He used to work. I'm not trying to like, give you his entire life story, but he used to work for like think tanks in reference to like American Sudanese relations. And so his whole goal, as far as I can tell, is to modernize and reduce the violence in his home country between jihadist insurgents and a national government. And so if I was to say, oh, well, you're just lying to me about how hardcore of a Muslim you are so you can conquer the world, then Gassim and I are not going to be friends, because he thinks that I'm being conspiratorial about who he is, what he cares about, what he wants to achieve in the world. And he's going to assume that I'm a bigoted a-hole because I won't even tolerate him as a human being in order to find out what he's actually all about. And then when we kind of have like a more chill relationship where, I'm not holding him to all these like strict giga crusader, giga jihadist memes, then we can have a real conversation about who Muslims are, what they care about, what they want out of the world, what their family life is like, the geopolitical situation in the Middle East and North Africa, which is always a mess, and how to make the world a better place. So that's where, if I'm fighting, if you guys are like, oh no, there's plenty of like Muslims who hide their power level, I would analogize this to Christian evangelicals, where there's plenty of Christian Protestants and Christian Catholics who are fundamentally good human beings, but they're not trying to proselytize to everyone. But there are evangelicals who effectively say that it is their God-chosen duty they have to proselytize to every single human being and convert as many souls as possible, or else they're not doing their job, right? So I would put that level of passion and zealotry. There's a mirror in the Christian community. Now, whether or not that expresses itself in jihadist terrorism or a mirror to jihadist terrorism, probably not. But then, of course, it did express itself in the medieval era, in the Reconquista and in the Crusades. So, just be chill, be cool. That's my advice. Heartbender says, been here for 15 seconds and seen more accountability by men here than women my whole life. Good. Terrorism says, gotcha. Islam creates the most brain dead morons on the planet, regardless of race. You can even say that diversity is its strength. I don't agree. I think you're being too hostile. Was every ship attack related to the US or Israel? No, it wasn't. I want to get through the content, but a majority of the registrations were like Panama, Malta, Liberia, etc. And so we don't even know the criteria through which these commercial ships were attacked. They were just attacked for being international commercial vessels. Keep up this opinion when confronted in real life, you PAB. Good Lord, guys. You guys are being very hostile in chat. Why is this guy still in the country? Just deport him if he loves him? Because he's a citizen. I'm okay with you burn the flag in protest, but to wipe your butt with it, that makes me mad. I mean, I agree with you. Corey Peltzman says, I can be a bit edgy in comments, so partially my fault. No. I'm not trying to jump down your guys' throats. If you guys feel this way, you feel this way. I'm trying to explain the way that I feel because I feel like my way is more productive. Christian Blair says, God, I am shipping Maxine Waters quote for both leftists and trumpets. These people need to be confronted and shouted down. Okay. Sacred Snow says, I think you've been touched on this before, but I'm looking for something a little in depth. What do you think of Singapore-style democracy compared to U.S. style? In my opinion, tolerance of intolerance is becoming the death of America in the age of disinformation. Seems like illiberal forces are collaborating to grow the far left and destroy the center. How does America fight this? Well, Sacred Snow, so that this is the question that you have to ask yourself and then answer for yourself. I think one of America's greatest strengths is freedom of conscience, freedom of speech. It's something that I think characterizes freedom in the United States of America, and it allows me to say edgy stuff on the internet. In Singapore, you do have some level of freedom of speech, but what is specifically prohibited is ethno-religious bigotry. You can't talk shit about Malaysians. You can't talk shit about Han Chinese. You can't talk shit about Muslims or Christians or Buddhists or Taoists or any of that kind of stuff. And if you do, the state will show up and they will arrest you, regardless of the context of you talking smack about another ethnicity, another race, or another religion. So in that way, the Singaporean authoritarian style, in a lot of Singaporeans believe that it's necessary in order to keep the patriotic cultural cohesion, to keep their city-state alive. And so they support that in what we would view as an infringement on the First Amendment. I don't know if I would want to do that, because I think that having Hasan Piker say all his crazy pro-terrorist bullshit and then calling it out is actually better than him being a closeted terrorist and not getting called out. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. I think it actually depends on whether or not you prefer Singaporean style authoritarian centrism or American style freedom. Exactly. Christian Blair says, I don't trust our leaders in either party to weaponize these policies. It's true. So Hasan is right. He does have a constitutionally protected right in order to say whatever R-slurred stuff he wants, as long as he's not actually endorsing violence. But with the Timothée Chalamet allegations, he is sweeping. So this guy is a young gentleman who posted to TikTok. He rowed a dinghy boat out to one of the captured ships and videotaped the captured ships. He propagandizes for the Houthi government, I forget how he pronounces it, but the Ansar Hara movement, which I'm assuming is the Red Sea blockade and the Houthis. He propagandizes them. He praises them. He talks about on social media how he's ready for martyrdom. He does fancy pictures with AK-47s. He has Instagram posts with AK-47s. He posts anti-Jewish music. He did a interview with Hasan Piker, and then he's obviously hostile to Israel and hostile to the United States. So even if he is not a member of the al-Houthi movement, he's a propagandist for the Houthis. He even talked about how he hung out with the hostages. So my question to you is, if you're saying, oh, well, he's not a Houthi, lol, and even if he was a Houthi, I don't care, then I'm going to say he might as well be a Houthi, because even if he's not a member of the al-Houthi family, as Hasan consistently points out, he supports the Houthis. He's in Yemen. He does propaganda for the Houthi government. And he also has talked to and hung out with hostages of the pirates. And he's also been on the captured ships. Why is he being given access? And it's because he's a pro-Houthi propagandist who lives in Yemen. So Hasan's right. He doesn't care if he's a Houthi. Well, I'm going to make the same criticism, aren't I? What's up, guys? Here for my daily dose of psychic damage. Well, I live to serve, brother. I live to serve. Islam has been weaponized politically. Every ideology has been weaponized politically. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, and empowering authoritarianism is a game of Russian roulette. I'm with you. All right. Be sure to like the stream if you haven't liked it, subscribe or follow if you haven't done so. Super chats are never required, always appreciated. Let's continue.
Fuck this.
Dude. Oh, yeah. Do you? But you might get arrested for that soon.
Not in the United States of America. You could get arrested in Australia, but you're not going to get arrested for being vaguely supportive of terrorist organizations as an American citizen. It's actually one of the things that really frustrates me about our country, even if it's ultimately good.
I know, but it's like, I mean, this is the shit I do say all the time, and then people will clip it and be like, look, he's so radical and he's so scary. And it's, yeah, let's not investigate why people would be so resentful about America. Let's just simply talk about how Hasan only says America bad. You know,
the next time someone yells at you about that and they clip you, you should be like, hey, send them to me and tell them to debate me. Not because I want to like be your champion or something, but because I need people to debate because I destroy them and they're all scared. And I need someone to send them to me. So could you think about that?
Okay.
Okay, BadEmpanada, I'm happy to talk to you. Happy to talk to you. I think you're schizophrenic. I think you're a piece of garbage. I think you're an a-hole. I think you do the clown nose on off thing. I'll be happy to talk to you.
I'll ask them to debate you.
That would be the biggest fucking debate, bro. But I can't fucking find people to debate. Like guys, the people who debate me, like random Reddit commenters.
Like BadEmpanada and Hasan Piker just advocated war crimes on the stream. They were endorsing Houthi terror attack and civilian shipping, advocating war crimes on the stream. Hasan Piker
and Harmonic, you should reload your page. I'm up to 30 likes on the stream. But yes, please like the stream. It does help out in the algorithm.
For 2 hours, 45 minutes, I wipe my ass with the American flag. That's what he says. So you have to actually ask, why is this guy an American citizen?
Rather than a random guy.
It's not going to happen. The only reason why they do it to me is because, one, I have a lot, like, no disrespect to you, but you are in the filth all the time. So like, it's very hard to tackle your image in that way. Like, it doesn't matter if they clip you out of context. Like,
yeah, I mean,
and then also
he stands on business though. This is one of my frustrations with what they're saying right now. Is what's the clip out of context? You just said you support the Houthis. By proxy, if you support the Houthis, then you support the Houthis missing random commercial ships, kidnapping crews, and killing three innocent civilian shipmen, right? So you support that. So what's the clip out of context? You support terrorism. You support extrajudicial violence against civilians in order to achieve political aims. What is the missing context?
And also on top of that,
and be like this.
Not only that, but also like your
how dare you insult friend of the stream Drew Pavlou, but I'm going to read it anyways because it's funny. Mega Zero says, why does Drew look like Bobby Hill if he was a lesbian? So rude. So rude.
What was I going to say? I'm forgetting. It's fucking so late. Holy shit. I've been live since 11. I'm on my 10th hour right now.
Did you hear the shit they were saying about you? I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen that yet.
At 4 p.m.
Hasan keeps going lower and lower. It's genuinely insane. It actually
They'll
is.
never do it because like
Hasan is in pro-kidnapping
they don't care
Filipinos.
about
Insane.
anything. They just like want to.
You can't remove
drive home a
citizenship from
fucking
someone who's born in the
narrative
US. Yeah, well, maybe sometimes they
I
should be
get
able to
views,
for
though.
people who
Actually,
support
like,
terrorism.
people, when they put me in the title, they actually get views, which is surprising. So
I don't think it's
that
surprising.
might entice them. I mean, I'm not that well known.
Okay, the mic. You guys are muted. One sec.
He can decolonize himself. Yup, decolonize
I
yourself.
fucked up. One sec. Oh no, they're laughing.
I'll fast forward so we can get audio back.
Who can't even string 3 fucking sentences together, being like trying to repeat the talking points that they got from the likes of Ethan fucking Klein, who a couple years prior they would have openly recognized is a dumbass who is only predisposed with goofs and fucking gaffes. Or has been called.
Ethan Klein?
Wait, so hold on. If Ethan Klein is so stupid, then how did he do so well in the debate against you? I would say it's because he effectively forced you to recognize the fact that you do support terrorism. You don't mind dog whistles. I would say that Ethan Klein did a darn good job in your debate. Now, you can say that he got details wrong, like the evidence of sexual assaults on October 7, 2023, but he made you demonstrate that you sweep for the evidence of sexual assaults on October 7, 2023. So he effectively, even while being poor at argumentation and using poor evidence, he still proved his broader point that you do apologia for terrorism, both for Hamas and for the Houthis, and that you minimize the sexual assaults that did occur on October 7, 2023. So, you know, I feel like Ethan won. But is he a cute lesbian? Yes. In my opinion, if you're going to call Drew Pavlou a Bobby Hill lesbian, I think he's a cute lesbian. If you're into masculine lesbians, Drew is a cute lesbian. You guys are so mean. He's a friend of the channel. Stop being rude. Corey Peltzman says, Albana noticed for inspiring individual Muslims to wage freelance jihadi warfare for the first time, as prior to his influence, jihad had been a caliph as a Muslim ruler. Yeah, so I don't know if that's accurate, only because I don't know what time that Albana was alive. But as an example, in the 19th century, there were the Barbary pirates who were Ottoman privateers, but they didn't even really have sanction from the state. They were kind of more tolerated. And so Barbary pirates would go out into the Mediterranean and kidnap American and European sailors. So this problem is like 200 years old, by the way. And so the United States responded militarily. And when they went to the Ottoman Empire to say, hey, can you get these pirates to stop harassing our boats? The Ottoman Empire effectively said, well, you know, these people are a part of our kingdom and they believe in the supremacy of Islam. You guys are infidels or kafir because you might be people of the book, but you're still at a lesser degree. So if you don't pay them tribute, then no, we can't stop them. And so what ended up happening was the United States of America was like, okay, bet. And then we started doing military patrols in the Mediterranean. And every time a Barbary pirate ship came towards an American ship, they sunk it. So, you know, I actually, the reason why I like the Barbary pirate wars historically so much is that there's this narrative within libertarian circles that the United States was isolationist until World War II. But if you actually look at the history of the 19th century, with our expansion westward, the Mexican-American War, the Barbary Pirate Wars, and the Native American Wars, it's very clear that what happened was we started isolationist, then people started screwing with our economic interest, then we sent in the troops, then we had an escalated conflict, and then we realized that it was easier to have troops there to defend our commercial interest than to wait for thieves and pirates and murderers to kill our people first and then respond militarily, which actually like that totally explains the American military hegemony in a very logical narrative way. Bulmedia Steel Dragon says Hasan will never concede that he lost. Only way to do that is in a court of law. Yeah, but I don't think he needs to be sued just for being an idiot. Jefferson was the first to deal with the Barbary pirates, I believe. Yep. The first people to declare war on the USA were Barbary pirates who were Muslim. True. Oh, cute lesbian for sure. The fat lesbian from... You guys are so rude. We were always willing to protect our interests. It's just our interests grew over time. Yeah. Now we're responsible for 2/3 of international trade. Possum Nation says, I love Drew because the CCP sends agents to harass him. He's the front line in Australia. He really is. He's such a patriot. I really do love it. Anyways, continuing on.
Klein's like original, like the way he gets the talking points in the first place is from like a game of telephone from his 5 staff members in ChatGPT. So, and then by the time it gets to the other slot
it's like
tubers,
Dan Stalkman and fucking Sex Pest and Boner Box. Like I think it's those guys that are giving him talking points.
You could tell, like in the debate with you, when he started talking over you, he was actively asking ChatGPT for talking points, and then would just read them verbatim. And he had never actually read them before. He was just going over them in that moment, especially during the part about like the Jewish expulsions. Yeah. Holy shit, that was the most obvious ChatGPT moment I've ever seen in my life.
I don't think it was ChatGPT. I suspect it was Boner Box that gave him like he clip chimped Avi Schleim, dude. Mm-hmm. That was so fucking devastating. I was like this is such a disservice to hundreds of thousands of people that are gonna fucking watch this and believe you. Like you are deluding hundreds of thousands of people. It makes me
debate was
so
such
mad.
a fucking shit show as well. Like literally,
no shame, guys. He's gone
over you, reading like an entire thing that someone else sent.
Yeah, sure. Crawling Chaos says, hey, y'all, who is Drew? Just got here. Drew Pavlou is this gentleman right here. He's a militant liberal. That's how I'll describe him. A militant liberal from Australia. He definitely hates Hasan Piker and BadEmpanada. BadEmpanada is the guy who started the harassment campaign using Child Protective Services against Ethan Klein, who is a Jewish creator, who isn't even really like a giga Zionist. He just thinks that the state of Israel should continue to exist. And then, of course, this is Hasan Piker, far lefty pundit who just got onto NBC News and The Daily Show, who is a massive dirtbag and who already in the stream has endorsed the Houthi pirates. So there's no more. Whenever you get into a Twitter spat and you're like, oh, yeah, Hasan Piker sweeps for Hamas and supports the Houthis. If a Hasan Piker simp jumps into your replies and says, no, he doesn't, then just know that they're lying. They're wasting your time. Don't even get into a debate in them and go find like clips for them and all that kind of stuff. Say, I know you're lying. I've watched him say this. It's not out of context. Corey Pelsman says, oh, my other message got ate by Automod. Well, be less edgy. Good God. K Soko says, the fact that Hasan can't use people's actual names or stage names is enraging. What the F? Hasan, just use an ounce of decorum, please. He doesn't need to. He's saying that, so BadEmpanada is saying that in the debate, in which, in my opinion, Ethan Klein made Hasan Piker look like a fool, Ethan Klein was using talking points from ChatGPT. That's BadEmpanada's assertion. Hasan Piker's assertion is that he used a lefty creator named Lonerbox, who is super progressive and sympathetic with the Palestinian cause, and then also talking points from Destiny and Dan Saltman. So he's trying to discredit Ethan Klein by saying that his talking points come from bad communities. Mega Zero says, yo, that's how I feel about the you're just a trans person clip. Yeah. I was copy pasting the Google AI answer I got, lol. Oops. Anyways.
And him while you're still speaking, like, oh, holy fuck. That would be my debate with him. But the thing is, I would like scream back at him. I would scream louder and I would win. So it's okay.
Yeah, that's not how that works. If I had screamed at any given moment in that over the course of 5 hours and 40 minutes, that would.
K Soko says, so he discredits people by calling them boner box. That's loner box.
Would be the only thing that they plastered.
Triggered.
Because the conversation that I had with Ethan Pryor, where he like cried at the end of it because people were being mean to him, was literally only remembered by all of these fucking debate pornographers who only care about the blood sport, except for that one conversation that me and Ethan had 2 fucking years ago at this point, where Ethan Klein left crying. At that point, they said, Hasan, you're so mean. And that was the only narrative because they recognized that there was no fucking argument that Ethan could present that looked good. So they literally just hyper-focused on how fucking mean I was when I told him I was entertaining him with kitty gloves. And it's mind-boggling how quickly these fucking debate pedophiles will switch off. At one point, they fucking love the blood sport. But as soon as it's like no longer fashionable to love the blood sport because their side in the conversation is like losing the conversation, then the debate pedophiles turn around and hit
debate pedophiles. Hasan is a rich grifter and the other bloke is a mentally ill racist.
Podcast co-host.
Yeah, like.
Sorry, I might have said something incorrect. So Niet Nosa says, did you just say that BadEmpanada is a person who believes Israel should exist? Lol, quite the opposite. He is staunch pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas supporter and big anti-Zionist. If I said BadEmpanada, I meant Ethan Klein. So Ethan Klein believes that Israel should exist. BadEmpanada is a very pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, and he does support Hamas, and he does support the Houthis. And then I would say Hasan Piker is 30% less schizophrenic than BadEmpanada. So Ethan Klein, Jewish creator, got harassed by BadEmpanada. BadEmpanada, terrorist simp, and then Hasan Piker, slightly less of a terrorist simp. Grassroots says there's a very real underlying rot here where Arab-dominated states, including lying as a part of their geopolitical calculus, the intent is to pass the lie on as the backbone of a legitimate tragedy. Prime Kai, interesting. So, yeah, I would say that there's absolutely a normalization of dishonesty, particularly when it comes to BadEmpanada, where he claimed to send the skulls to Ethan Klein. He claimed to, I'm trying to think of the other thing. He claimed to send the skulls to Ethan Klein. He claimed to have gotten CPS called on him, but now he's in the call and he's like, oh, I was just joking, right? And that's the kind of like normalized harassment that's common, particularly in BadEmpanada's community, but also has a Venn diagram share with Hasan Piker's community. They don't care if they're telling the truth as long as their lies are effective.
It's on fake pride on Ethan's podcast.
I mean, it's also like, I hope you've learned since then that these people do not deserve you being nice to them. These people either directly support or tacitly support child murder, mass child murder. That's ultimately
He's so
what
mentally
it is.
ill. He's so unbelievably mentally ill.
Be mean to them. If they feel bad, if they feel harassed, honestly, great. I don't give a fuck. Fuck them. Fuck each and every one of them. We need to be mean to these guys. We need to be assholes. They deserve it. They really do deserve it.
I think that there's no winning over the fucking slop tuber audience.
Dude, he's literally the definition of a slop tuber.
They're
too parasocial.
They have a stranglehold. They have a stranglehold on so much on the dumb guy contingency. And I think there was a point.
Dude. Hasan Piker said that, sorry, I drifted out for a second, but if he said that Ethan Klein and the debate bros are so reliant on the dumb guy contingency, Hasan had this passionate rant the other day where he was like, the lesser of two evils. If you're a Democrat who believes in the lesser of two evils, then between the case between Hamas and Israel, then you should be voting for Hamas. And like his entire chat was like, yes, queen. Yes, slay, go off. And it was like, dude, there's the dumb guy contingent right there. And by the way, that doesn't mean that you have to side with Israel. That just means that you shouldn't be cheering on Hamas. Like, these people are not running an election. They're in an existential conflict over the future of Gaza. Like, you don't have to vote for either one of them. You could think that Israel, blowing up 80% of buildings, destroying infrastructure, and also killing 65,000 people is bad and horrifying, and the civilian collateral damage is horrifying. And at the same time, you can say that Hamas triggered this event by walking into Israel and slaughtering 1,300 people. Hasan is going to say the history goes back further than that. Of course it does, but we're going to go tit for tat and blow for blow all the way back to 1948 and even back into the 1850s. So, the Hasan pretending that large contingents, large swaths of his audience aren't also the dumb guy contingency is crazy. And also, that's not our contingency. We have dozens of beautiful souls in our chat today, and each and every single one of you has a 3,000 IQ. You have an immaculate sense of taste in your content, and you are all the more proven, all the more intelligent and smart for being here. So not you guys. We are not reliant on the dumb guy contingency. All right. Thanks, Voided Parrot. Not sure what that's in reference to. Grassroots says, and to say there's a cultural issue in the US and Canada necessarily, but these people want to kill my family because they are Jewish and Israeli. Yeah, there's schizos here. Absolutely. Keep up that rhetoric when you're in public. True. Kingslayer Damocles says, Hasan and BadEmpanada unironically support child murder. They back the claim that all settlers, including children, are targets. Yeah, they mirror. So I talked about this in the previous stream as well. When is the IDF see a guy with an AK and they hit him with a bomb, and then there's a dozen, civilian deaths or 3 or 4 civilian deaths, they view that as morally equivalent to Hamas marching into Israel and gunning down 4 civilians. They don't recognize the laws of warfare. They don't recognize rules of engagement. They don't recognize any kind of moral difference. To them, it's the same. Did you see what Hasan said about Biden's cancer? Yeah, he actually said like good. He said Biden has Biden, for those of you who don't know, was announced to have like stage 4 prostate cancer. And Hasan Piker said, well, you signed off on the Gazan genocide, therefore I don't care. And good. I hope that you have cancer. That's what he said. K Sogo says, I'm winning. How about you? Yeah, I'm doing well. That's too much pressure, too many IQs. Yeah. Yeah. All right, moving on.
Like the same people who used to like screech about people crying about anti-Semitism are now doing that because suddenly Ethan Klein is their friend.
Yeah.
Sorry, real quick pause. The people crying about anti-Semitism. In the debate, in the conversation between Ethan Klein and Hasan Piker was like, oh, the Jews that are on college campuses who are complaining about anti-Semitism, they're just a bunch of crybabies. So by logic, he is stating that harassing random Jewish people on American college campuses is an acceptable form of behavior because there's a genocide happening in Gaza. You don't know if they're Zionists. There's actually a 1/3 chance that they're not Zionists. There's a 1/3 chance that they don't support the state of Israel or its expansionist policies. But you can go ahead and harass that person because verbally accosting a person because of their ethnicity or because of their religious background is not bad within the context of a genocide happening 3,000 miles away. Legitimately psychotic take. Void says, that was a reply to Hasan saying F them all. Okay, gotcha. All right, continuing.
I know. It's so ridiculous. I mean, the people themselves, they say anti-Semitic shit. They say actually anti-Semitic shit. And then they turn around and they're like, wow, these guys are being big anti-Semites. Fucking so annoying. Anyway, I got to go to bed. I'm so tired.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Do you have someone else? No problem. It's finally great to talk to Hasan Piker, the perfidious Ottoman. The Ottoman Hasan Piker has been confronted by BadEmpanada, wanted international criminal. Multiple counts of crimes committed by BadEmpanada, platformed by Hasan Piker. Hasan Piker, anti-Semite, platformed BadEmpanada on his stream.
Yeah. Agrees with everything.
Someone get that.
You can actually see Hasan like cringing a little bit because this exact clip will be used against him because BadEmpanada actually is a schizophrenic terrorist apologist. Does this have my son's germs on it?
Probably.
Baby, does it have my son's germs on it? Okay, then I got it. That's fine. All right. Sorry, we're having a little case of a norovirus, which can make you poop yourself in the Counterpoints household. So I had to double check because my son stole my water bottle earlier, and my wife and I we were scrapping. We were scrapping over the lighting in the new studio. And so I had to make sure that she didn't just give me norovirus. And then Khalil, sorry if I mispronounce your name, you can correct me again. He says this is just playing into the fascist hands. I mean, I agree because effectively what happens is when you normalize attacking random minorities in the left, then what happens is they run to the right. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't Israelis run to MAGA if MAGA is more pro-Israel than the left? And when the left normalizes harassing random, normie, boring civilian Jews on American campuses, they would view that as the precursor to actually substantive violence against Jews. So why wouldn't they run to MAGA, right? This is why we're watching this today, is because if you want the Democrats to build a coalition with normie Republicans and then normie progressives and maybe even, God help me, some leftists, then you need to call this bad behavior out because this is schizophrenic, borderline evil, excusing murder and excusing horrible behavior. So yeah. Grassroots says, there have been 2,000 years of pogroms. This isn't new, but it gets very old. When Israel responds, hundreds of thousands of people get radicalized towards genociding the Jews. Yeah. I mean, that's actually what's happening right now. The wife is committing biological warfare. Yes. Yes. Mega Zero, that Drew Pavlou observation sounded like a Tourette's guy. If you know, you know. Yeah, there you go. Daddy Shelley getting biological weapons attacked at home. Listen, if I go down, you know who took me out. Sacred Snow says, line this stuff up with everyone in a panel starts cringing whenever Myron from, what is it, Fresh and Fit or Nick Fuentes start doing blatant Nazi stuff. Yeah, we're not even paying attention to the Nazis because the left-wingers are saying such crazy stuff, 100%.
To the New York Post, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The New York Times.
He agrees with everything that I say.
The New York Times, get it to CNN.
Do you condemn him? No, he says.
Do you condemn BadEmpanada?
That's so funny. That's going to be the next question.
Yes.
All right.
Morgan.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
I forgot to say
Thanks for
something.
coming on.
I've had people stopped at the border of the U.S. and asked about their association with me. So next time it might happen.
For real?
Okay. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I want to put it past them. They asked me about my Twitch bans, so. All right.
Next
Peace,
time.
everybody.
Sabra hummus. Bye.
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 I'm going to keep watching and I'll go back to the start of the
greeting,
guys.
You have someone else coming on, Noah?
I have someone at 10:30.
What time is it now?
It's 10:10, so 20 minutes. So
All right. I haven't drunk water in like 3 hours, so I should probably go.
Yeah, it's late.
Noah
What time
Samsen's
is it for you?
disgusting, guys. Look at him in his fucking catboard.
2
Disgusting.
a.m.
So
Oh
disrespectful.
God, yeah. Go drink some water, man.
In my undisclosed location, no one knows where it is. Definitely not Argentina.
Delicious
But,
water from prison. You own that guy's ass, dude.
I'll give you permission to put one of my videos on if you want to take a break until
Oh,
your next
sure,
guest
yeah.
comes on.
Yeah, I'll do that.
The one about the lies they told about South African apartheid. I think that's a good one to show all the people who are still here because of Hasan having been here.
Yes. Free promo. Also, you said you don't want me to get a tattoo if I hit 500K of your
Not of
logo?
me.
Channel
Please,
logo.
not of
Not your
me.
face. Not your face.
I just linked the video. Like you just play that for the next 20 minutes if you want. It's about that long.
Sure.
And
Wait.
but please don't get a tattoo of me. I don't know what you should get a tattoo of, but not of my logo. I'm probably going to change my channel name and logo at some point because it's childish and what a fucking name. Bad. What the fuck? I don't want to be known as that. Fuck.
Yeah.
BadEmpanada. No, please. I need a real name. Not that.
There's a lot of you're carrying a lot of baggage with the name. Yeah. Just change your name.
No, not
Change your
because of that. It
location.
sounds like what is that even? It doesn't mean it's so
BadEmpanada.
stupid.
It's pretty
Uh,
stupid.
The empanada is bad because it smokes cigarette and it has a backwards cap. Do you get it? What was I thinking?
He's
Worst mistake of
naughty.
my life.
Naughty empanada.
Yeah,
all
it's a joke. Anyway,
I won't do it.
so I'm gonna head out.
Uncle Piker is running out of time. His youthful
thank
years
you
are
for
escaping him,
finally
just like his hairline. I will
facilitating my
celebrate Hasan's
conversation
40th
with
birthday along with him
the
very soon. Yeah,
fierce
he's
Ottoman
getting very
Turk.
fucking old, isn't
We
he?
did it.
Hasan Piker.
We did it, chat.
Literally everything about these people is a projection of
play the
Ottoman
video
how
if
broad
you
of
want. You have my
self-awareness they are.
permission.
Yeah,
Bye,
literally
everyone.
facts.
Everybody say bye, chat. Bye bye. Wow. What an incredible moment in time.
We'll go back to watch the start. Let's watch the start because we tuned in about 2 hours, 30 minutes in.
Okay. Back in live, I believe. We're at 245,000 plus 20,000 plus 12,000.
Hell yeah! Get
It's a
everyone
lot.
here.
It's a lot of money. Okay, I think we're back. Hello, people.
Yeah, you're live again.
We just all agreed to support each other and agree with everything that each of us say always, and we're best friends and we're moving. I have to bleach my hair.
Oops.
200.
Get
It's a
everyone
lot.
here.
It's a lot of money. Okay, I think we're back. Hello, people.
Yeah, you're live again.
This is
Just,
genuinely the
all
lowest of the
agreed
low.
to
I actually completely
support
agree,
each other
Nike,
and with
man.
everything that each of us say always, and we're best
Dude, you
friends.
still
and
listen to
moving
Kanye West
and
music?
moving it.
All right, let's go. Good God. Get past the intros.
I'm fucking psycho.
Yeah, so I hear you're a liberal
Sorry.
Zionist, Hasan, and I hear
Is when I feel like they're doing something that I think is, I don't shy away from
And yeah, these guys are just like hardcore mentally ill terrorists. Terrorist
being critical to
supporters.
politicians and offering positive reinforcement to politicians when I feel like they're doing something that I think is appropriate, like moving the needle in the direction, because it's the same framework that I operate with within the Democratic Party, where like these are the available platforms of.
This is not me on 1.5 or 2 speed, which by the way, Drew based. I can't do it because I want you guys to actually be able to hear the arguments, but I can absolutely listen to 1.5 or 2.0. So let's go.
Influence, and I will always go there because as long as our interests align, I have no issue going to those platforms, because at the end of the day, they're giving more legitimacy to myself and vice versa, in my opinion.
I mean, giving you legitimacy, what's the point of that, really? What is the point of them giving you legitimacy if in the end you do kind of demonstrate support for them in many cases? That's the thing. I think people see you very much as the Bernie Sanders guy, even though that is sort of contradicted by what you said earlier. Maybe it's erroneous, but people very much see you as like a big Bernie Sanders supporter. I wouldn't say I see you as like a big Bernie Sanders supporter. I think I see you more as someone who maybe doesn't like what he says, but is a little iffy on making that clearer, which I think you sort of did just a second. I think you preempted everything I said about you when you were ready with that. It's cheating.
No, I actually have talked about this quite a bit, even before and after your statements, as a matter of fact. But you know how it is with clips. You probably don't get that from.
I mean, I do watch what you say sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I don't click. I don't go to any place that posts like a clip saying, I don't think such a place will even exist. Like Hasan Piker says positive thing about Bernie Sanders. He's a 20-second clip of it. I don't know. What place would that be?
I talk for.
Well, and by the way, this is actually funny that the conversation is opening this way, because they're effectively purity testing where Bernie Sanders isn't far left enough. That you need to understand what section of the internet this is, and despite them having hundreds of thousands of people who watch this content, you need to understand how far left this is. Bernie Sanders is not far left enough. AOC is a shill. AOC is not far left enough. This is a schizophrenic part of the left that if you want to build a coalition of actually politically relevant people that normies are going to vote for, this is not a part of it. And so the fact that BadEmpanada feels comfortable calling out Hasan Piker for playing footsie with the furthest left American politicians on the stage, and they're insufficiently left wing, kind of tells you what you need to do in reference to whether or not you cater to these people or whether or not you make them a part of the movement. And this is my other frustration too, is that NBC News did a segment normalizing and promoting Hasan Piker in reference to his detention with Customs and Border Patrol. And then same thing with The Daily Show. The Daily Show did a totally softball interview with no follow-up in reference to who Hasan Piker was. And they originally labeled him a liberal, which they then changed to a progressive, which they then changed to, I mean, they left it up as progressive, but they're effectively ignoring all of the heat that they're taking for Hasan being a piece of garbage. Old School, thank you for the donation. Getting the donations rolling today. You need to up your avocado toast game in light of these fools. Sabra sells avocado toast. Sounds good. Thank you for the dono, buddy. Appreciate it.
For 8 hours a day, it's very hard for you to in any, like, unless you're watching 8 hours a day, you're probably not going to see the exact same thing that I told you just now. I've spoken about probably 25 to 35 times whenever some chatter comes in and annoys me, and then I go on a fucking long and convoluted rant about.
You should stop reading your chat, by the way.
Yeah, that's part of the puzzle. That's part of how I do this back and forth. But
I like it's just right now, real quick. Like BadEmpanada, you made like 1 or 2 or maybe 3 videos talking about the AOC Bernie interview, and then I don't know how much you watch of us on talking about it, but like just talking to each other now, clearing that up. Do you feel like that clears up anything now that you see that he's kind of?
No, not really, because I think a lot of that, like there was the initial reaction to the interview, and there was like responses to people who want Hasan, responses to people like who want Hasan but were defending sort of like the whole idea of like engaging with the mainstream Democratic Party and like sort of trying to pull people to your side.
Just to clarify, he's actually mad that Hasan sat down with AOC and Bernie because apparently they're genocidal because they don't support Hamas openly. Insane.
Them and stuff like that.
That's how mentally ill BadEmpanada is.
Yeah, that was basically the whole thing there. It wasn't so much like I said something, Hasan said something, I responded. It was more like that. What I would say is that Americans are way too optimistic with their former politicians. And if there is something we should preach, it's that these people are ultimately fucking useless and you're gonna have to do shit yourself.
Yeah, here's the thing. I understand.
We've got a comment on my Twitch. Thank you guys. Go to my Twitch as well. I'm trying to
modern Democratic Party is entirely useless. The Democratic Party is well, it's not entirely useless. They can be put to good use on select issues or across the board. Maybe one day it could, in a totally idealistic world, they could be a functional working labor party. Obviously, we're not there, and we might never get there. And I don't disagree with that. But this is, I just wanted to offer clarity on the framework that I operate off of, because I think that you and I both will recognize that Americans don't have a semblance of class consciousness. And I feel like at this stage, the most important thing you can do is to pull people back from reactionary discourse, pull people back from reactionary ideals. And the best possible way to do that is by constantly reasserting the position over and over again that the Democratic Party has to have a class first politics. And also that, these people that have been targeted as like vulnerable populations, marginalized identities that are presented as your enemy are not actually your enemy at all. It's simply a red herring, a distraction that the reactionary forces uses, and the Democrats are wholly incompetent at dealing with because they don't have this class first politic.
Okay. So Hasan is arguing for some level of like political efficacy where the Democratic Party shifts to an economic rationale over a social rationale, and then tries to understand that Islamists and jihadists and these people who are being vilified on the world stage are not actually your enemy. And, you know, to me, this is like the sanitized line of argumentation that he would use in public. But in, you know, all of his points point to that he sweeps for Hamas and he sweeps for the Houthi terrorists. These people are my enemy. I don't care what you say about it. If you blow up random commercial ships, if you kidnap people, if you murder people, without discrimination for whether or not they're member of an opposing armed force or whether or not they're civilians, you're my enemy by definition. So the fact that Hasan is like, you know, he's trying to normalize this behavior is, I think, already bad enough. And then BadEmpanada wants to push it further and say, oh, well, you can't even participate in the electoral system. And if you guys remember, Hasan Piker failed to endorse Kamala Harris, failed to say to vote for the lesser of two evils. He's wildly influential within this generation. And I'm not saying that he is solely responsible for Kamala's loss. I'm not saying that. I don't think he has that much clout or influence. However, the point is that it would take everybody pulling together in order to get Kamala to win, considering all the challenges of this electoral campaign. And look at what's happening now. Look at what's happening now. What's happening now is Trump rubber stamps all of Israel's, higher, more aggressive behavior, and he's also trying to facilitate ethnic cleansing. There was a news story posted the other day that the Trump admin is trying to secure negotiations with the Libyan government to take 1 million of the Gazan population. There's no way in hell that Kamala Harris would ever sign off on that. So even if you think that Kamala Harris is and the Biden administration are bad because they allowed Israel to militarily respond to October 7, 2023, and they sanitized what Israel was doing in Gaza, even if you think they're bad for that, they're nowhere near as bad as Trump. And so the fact that they couldn't even make that calculus, and if anything, BadEmpanada is saying we need to go further. I think that this just speaks to the fact that these people are schizophrenics detached from reality, and it's all about virtue signaling on the internet. It's not about actual political efficacy. Sacred Snow says, you can't participate in the electoral system. This is exactly why that we can't coalition build with these people. It's a red-brown alliance. Get them out. You said it. Other people can have different opinions. Listen, I'm a never Trump Republican, all right? I wear that on my sleeve. There are things that I'm going to align with the Democrats with, and then I'm going to say some wild conservative stuff every now and then, and you're just going to have to deal with it, okay? That's our relationship. So if you want me to choose the lesser of two evils, I will side against MAGA when it comes to pretty serious stuff. But I'm going to say some chud stuff every now and then. So your options are somebody who believes in the Republic, believes in liberal democracy, believes in the Constitution of the United States, but he might have a chud take every now and then, or somebody who doesn't believe in any of those things and wants to have a violent revolution and doesn't even believe in democracy. Which way, Democratic Party?
Okay. First thing here is that the whole reason why you have this idea that you have to you're sort of stuck into working with the Democratic Party. It's not your fault, obviously, because you want every single person in the fucking United States of America. But this is sort of like a self-perpetuating circular logic. Yeah.
Corey Peltzman, you're going to be my one guy today. So you prefer people dying in a war zone rather than population transfer? No, I support Fallujah too. Okay. Geopolitical rant. These people are schizophrenics. I'm going to take a little mental breather and just show you what I would do. So what I would do is Fallujah 2.0, Operation Phantom Fury, where what we did was we said, hey, go to a safe location or leave the city because we're about to go do a bunch of crazy military stuff. Go through similar to how IDF went through, but my tactics would have been different. But now that this area has largely been cleared of militants, of course, there's still militants. What we would do is we would do systematic rebuilding of Gaza. Okay. So I do a military checkpoint across this entire quarter. Then I would rebuild the infrastructure with water, internet, air conditioning, decent houses, all that kind of stuff. Then I would screen the civilian population that's moved back in, and then I would allow them to move back in. And then when Islamists and jihadists pop their head up, we would kill them. Then I would do this, take that next quarter, rebuild, make sure it's secured, screen the people who are coming in and out, all that kind of stuff, water, internet, housing, air conditioning. so on and so forth, until the entirety of the Gaza Strip is rebuilt and the civilian population reacclimated to an actually decent standard of living that supports a decent economy, to the point that terrorism is not really on the brain, because even though they do have a very small, segmented, densely populated territory, they actually have a decent life. So basically Trump's plan, really, Corey, really? Do you think that slowly rebuilding Gaza while ethnically displacing half of the population and turning it into the Riviera with casinos is Trump's plan? Like that's Trump's plan, is the Riviera with casinos and then ethnically cleansing 2 million people. You heard slowly rebuild Gaza and turn it back over to the Palestinians, and you think that's the same as Trump's plan? Are you high? What are you doing, dude? Are you just trying to piss me off? What the fuck? Sorry, Ken. Sorry, Ma. Sorry, Jesus. What are you talking about? Slowly rebuilding Gaza versus clearing out 2 million people. Am I high? No, I'm not high. I'm very sober. I'm very sober. The fact that you think that's Trump's plan is crazy. Yeah, give them a life and maybe they'll choose to live it. Exactly. Mr. Mbasic says Trump's plan is to send them all to Libya. Yeah. Adam Friended was totally right here. This is 100% an honor culture problem. Listen, we don't have talk like that in our chat, Grassroots Hegemon. You take that Adam Friended was totally right someplace else. So apparently I got a mention on Sitch and Adam the other day where Adam said, I'd have to take a look at the clip, but he said that I tried to buy him off. And I'm actually really wondering what that was, because I think I tried to, in reference to my communications with Sitch and Adam, because I thought we were going to be fellow travelers for a while. I think I said originally, hey, I want to try to facilitate a conversation between you and Vosh. That didn't work out. And then I tried to get them to meet with PV because I thought that Sitch and Adam would be good. Right. So if you're talking about being never Trump, then yeah, I think Sitch and Adam would be good. Now, if they were offended that people thought that they were socially and politically relevant enough in order to be involved in a never Trump coalition, my apologies for assuming that you would be a part of the never Trump coalition and that Daddy J-Mac was giving you so much money that you don't like money anymore. My apologies. I'm sorry for offending you with thinking that you would be a part of a never Trump coalition. And then obviously we all know how that worked out, where he kept sweeping for Trump up to and including the election while pretending that he wasn't. So, okay, 70% of your audience was pro-Trump and you went with your audience over going with what should be your espoused principles. Okay. That was insulting to you? That was upsetting to you? My apologies. Sacred Snow says, how were the U.S. relations with the locals at the time of Fallujah 2? Not great. Doesn't the plan rely on some sort of trust that the locals won't work with the insurgents? Israel surely doesn't have that. Yeah, there's a huge risk. And the relationship between the United States coalition forces and the city of Fallujah was never good. So, yeah, it's a risk. You're going to lose soldiers, 100%. K Soko says, I'm high too. And then who is it? Mega Zero says, I'm the high one. Gosh darn it. Sacred Snow says, in theory, I don't have a problem with Trump's plan. My issue is that he won't bring them back. Yes, he'll just cleanse them from the area and occupy the land and pawn them off on Libya. Trump Heights 2.0. Yes, that's the thing. It's not whether or not rebuilding Gaza is the right thing to do. The question is, does it get turned over to Palestinians, or do you just annex it and hand it over to the Israelis? Which, let's face it, that is the conspiracy theory of October 7, 2023, is that the Israeli government intentionally put the Gazans in a pressure cooker so they would eventually lash out. And when they lashed out, they would use that as a pretext to invade and annex Gaza. So if you invade and annex Gaza, you're kind of proving all the conspiracy theorists correct. Israel never tried to get the locals on their side, to be honest. Well, there you go. Anyways, that's enough geopolitical analysis, but that's what I would do. Let's go back to the schizophrenics.
Well, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, you have to leave a like, help us reach more
It's the
people.
only thing that's there, and then you do not do anything, or you don't do.
Yeah, it's so funny. They're basically both saying, oh yeah, the problem is that the Democratic Party isn't fully communist or something like that. If you're watching, guys, we've got about 20 people watching live on YouTube. Please leave a like. It'll help us reach more people.
An alternative to that.
That's an excellent point, Drew Pavlou. Like the stream if you haven't liked the stream already. Follow or subscribe if you're not following or subscribing. Super chats are never required, but always appreciated.
And just keep reinforcing the initial premise over and over again. So Americans are stuck in this sort of rut where it seems like it's completely unrealistic to ever challenge two-party system, so they don't try, and that's just sort of a self-perpetuating cycle. Because doing something like that takes a long time, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of people. But this whole Democratic Party, people like Bernie Sanders as well, very much reinforce this, even if perhaps at some point he didn't mean to. That's at some point he was really genuinely trying to challenge status quo, and he only joined the Democratic
Party. I'm going to slow this down because Drew Pavlou has put it at 2x speed.
Because he thought he had to win the primaries. It's the only possible way.
All right, that sounds horrible. Let's try 0.75.
No chance. He probably didn't in that moment.
Yeah, it's funny, guys. Like, they're talking about Yemen. Hasan didn't even know where Yemen was on the map.
But then there's also the fact that logic gets you into this rut where you never ever try to do anything else. And there are many other countries where that had very strong two-party systems that in some cases lasted for like hundreds of years. The two-party system in the USA is younger than in some of those countries that broke it. And they very slowly worked from the ground up, like starting with local politics, building up to like state level.
I disagree with what iPhone Miller had
structures, using the political capital they got from that, not like immediately running for president, nothing else like the fucking Green Party or something. What a fucking joke that is. Like they do nothing but run for.
You should swap the screen.
What I mean is like,
what do you mean?
You have to start small. You have to build up from that until you can.
I'm going to see if I can find an original in the background, just because Drew screwing with the speed is making it difficult to listen to because he's at 2x speed. But it's not making it very pleasant to listen to. So I tried to slow it down so I could hear the schizophrenics better, but it's not really working. Grassroots says, were you talking to me? I wasn't talking about you and Adam Friended relationship at all, more that identified Arab cultures and Arab nations suffer as a result of honor culture. Yeah. Sorry if I went on a schizophrenic, non-related rant in reference to my relationship with Adam Friended. I know that wasn't your point. That was my point, though. I was joking that we don't glaze Adam Friended over here, but mostly joking. I don't care. People can like Adam. I just don't like Adam. But the yeah, same thing with the African American community with gang subculture. Gang subculture. They talk about. I've heard Sitch and Adam talk about dignity culture versus honor culture. So a dignity culture is where you have a base level of dignity that you extend to all human beings. And so you expect even the worst in your society to be able to work, pay their bills, take care of their family, all that kind of stuff. And broadly, America has a subcomponent, especially I would say in the Asian and Caucasian demographics of a dignity culture where you never really, you never screw each other over because there's a base level of dignity that's extended to all people, even if they're terrible. And then within the gang culture of African American neighborhoods specifically, there's an honor culture, which is effectively like the men are revered if they engage in certain levels of behavior. And I'm talking specifically about the gang culture. They're revered if they're masculine, if they're brave, if they're capable of violence, if they focus on money, if they get a lot of money. These are all things that are revered within the honor culture of gang culture within like rougher neighborhoods. But what ends up happening with honor culture is if you slight someone else, you have to reciprocate. It doesn't matter if they're schizophrenic. It doesn't matter if they're poor. It doesn't matter if they're desperate. If somebody slights you, you have to slight them back. And so that becomes like an escalation up until it becomes homicide. And so same thing with, some parts of like Pakistani, there's 100% Pakistani honor culture where if the women conduct themselves in a promiscuous way, then it's not the men who are seducing these women who are punished, although sometimes they are punished. It's ultimately the women who are punished, and they'll be either imprisoned or stoned to death or extrajudicially murdered. So yeah, honor culture sucks. It's bad for humanity. Mr. Bombastic says, sorry, but I don't want to see any Arab refugee camps on the land of Israel. Sure. But you could segregate it by district and then build up a district, have people move in, build up a district, have people move in, build up a district, have people move in. You could use Gaza in order to do it, or the Sinai. If Egypt was willing to do camps in Sinai, but then the fear, of course, is that if you move them into the Sinai, will Israel ever let them back in? Anyways, back to the schizophrenia, and I'm going to look for a different copy. The problem is that I think Noah Samsen took it down, so Drew is the best location for a copy right now.
And eventually challenge on the main stage. Now, the issue of this logic for me now is that it's too late. Honestly, I'm not sure that we have time for this sort of thing before the consequences of climate change basically take over the agenda entirely, and whatever political system we're trying to get into in this way just totally breaks down. So, I mean, I guess people should still do it, but what I'm trying to say is Americans have like this circular logic.
Make your face bigger.
Very much so. Democratic Party.
I'll make it a little bit.
So good for them. And I think that by sort of working with people like Bernie Sanders, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, irrespective of who they are, as individuals, of whether they are genuine or not genuine, and whether they are great people or not, whether they truly believe in some of the shit stuff that they perhaps forced into advocating for, just the same line with the Democratic Party, all of that doesn't really matter, because ultimately what they do is they sort of
BadEmpanada thinks AOC is like a Zionist terrorist or whatever. Insane.
Where they give people this idea that you have your voice in the party. You have your voice here in the party already. AOC is there for you. Bernie is there for you. They're already fighting for you. You don't have to do that much yourself. You know, maybe you can go to the protest yourself. Maybe you can do something like that. But by golly, you do not try to make your own party. You don't try to do something independently. You don't try to like build an apparatus entirely independent of the party, not like the DSA, but entirely independent of it, where you actually build it into something that can meaningfully threaten them and the two-party system, and thus meaningfully start putting pressure on your governments to actually really do something internationally as well. And Americans have really failed at that more so than any people in the world, which is, I think, like people say like the US is the belly of the beast. It's hard to do so. I don't think that's true at all. For one, until Trump, the US had the best free speech laws in the entire world, pretty much. You can say basically anything. You can support Hamas. It doesn't matter. Like, that's a great environment for that sort of thing. It's a really good environment for that sort of thing, if anything. Obviously, the electoral college is fucked. That makes it a lot harder.
Like a stream,
but I mean, Americans never even really tried to get to the steps before that, which is like the Senate and Congress, where those things are.
Corey Peltzman says, saying that Trump will never let them back is greater Israel conspiracy. Listen, man, let's just say that I'm pretty skeptical that Trump would allow that he would move 1 million people to Libya, and then he would very passionately care in 3 years, because it's not going to be done in 3 years, that he would very passionately care that a decade from now, when the reconstruction of Gaza is complete, that Donald Trump would come out of retirement, even if he was still alive, and say, no, Israel 100% has to give Gaza back to the Palestinians. That was the deal. You think he's going to care in a decade? That's, yeah, that's, you're saying that's a conspiracy. I think what you're saying is woefully charitable to Donald Trump.
The less bad. So I feel like there is absolutely a failure in the US for whatever reason. You know, obviously people like, and fucking Twitter Marxists would tell you that's just the way it is. You know, it's a bourgeois controlled political system, whatever. But whatever the reason is, the US is the country, and the United.
Drew Pavlou has been arrested for terrorism. Fucking so cringe, dude. Bernie's an economic idiot. The only good thing he does.
Hawk has the most fair assessment of whether or not Trump would allow Palestinians back in, which is, to be fair, I'm sure Trump would welcome Palestinians back into Gaza as long as they could afford the club memberships. Yeah, let's face it. There's one thing that Trump doesn't discriminate against, and it's money.
Does criticize greedy elites. Bro, why do your donors waste money on you? Lamo for 18 viewers, man, even after you were mentioned, just came here to donate, to hate on you. You anti-Semitic. Fucking retarded, dude. I don't even care. I don't know if you're busy, but no
offense to Drew. I do. He's a great guy, but I would rather talk to him.
He's literally never even made a video essay or anything. Honestly, let the fucking haters come to the stream. They're boosting our numbers.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I'm telling you, like, I agree with you completely, and that's a part of my.
In what I was responding to there was what you said about making the Democratic Party more class conscious specifically. I think.
Yeah, I think that's impossible. It's virtually impossible. That's why I said it would happen only in an idealistic society. But my goal is to use the platform that I have and expand on it, so that I can, once again, move people away from reactionary politics and
Dude, yeah, he definitely moves people away from reactionary politics. So true. Guys, we've got 29 people watching live on YouTube. If you're watching live on YouTube, leave a like. Help me reach more people. The more likes we get on the video, the more the YouTube algorithm will recommend it.
That's an excellent point. Like the stream if you haven't done so already. Follow, subscribe, whatever. Super chats never required. Always appreciated.
And help them focus on a class first politics. And wherever that goes, if there is a mechanism that can push the Democratic Party into actual submission to class first politics, then that's great. If that doesn't work, and there's an alternative, if there's an alternative third party out there, the only way that they will reach viability if it's backed by a strong labor movement that actually engages in labor militancy. And even then, I'm not entirely confident that like this can happen in the United States of America. But the reason why I speak on my perspective in the way that I do is because I'm speaking to Americans. And unfortunately, you got to make a lot of burger analogies if you want to get Americans on board. You have to give them hamburgers. Americans are either repulsed by what they perceive to be left politics. I'm not even talking about like revolutionary socialism. I'm talking straight up like basic bare minimum social democratic functions that are afforded by every other comparable OECD state is seen as like radical in this country. Socialism in and of itself is seen as a pejorative in this country. That's why people say like Nancy Pelosi's the worst thing imaginable. She's a socialist. Like obviously that kind of stuff is really stupid, but I think it's indicative of the average American's perspective on this stuff, considering that, America won the Cold War and this is the imperial core. And
the imperial core, so fucking true,
most of our working class is just either completely oblivious to
the lumpen proletariat,
and utterly confused by the notion of class consciousness, or
we got almost 30 people watching live. Yeah, guys, if you're watching.
All right, Drew, I appreciate the chill, but I'm going to fast forward you in a second. So, interesting parallel that I want you guys to be aware of because I bumped into it on Twitter is lefties use class consciousness and righties use racial consciousness, and I want to explain it to the uninitiated. So, class consciousness, as far as I understand it, is the awareness that you are a member of the working class. And so Marxist analysis has two classes, the bourgeois and the proletariat. And so the bourgeois are the people who own businesses and therefore become the upper elites, the people who control the means of production. And the argument from a Marxist perspective is that these people can be quite parasitic in that they extract the labor from the proletariat in order to fuel their institutions, and then they pocket the excess energy generated by these institutions in the form of profit. And as a result, they're disproportionately rich. So becoming a business owner makes you disproportionately wealthy and powerful from the Marxist analysis. Whereas proletariat, like even doctors are considered proletariat. Lawyers are considered proletariat because they're workers. They're the people who generate labor in order to benefit society. And so within a Marxist framework, class consciousness says like you have to be aware that you are proletariat and therefore have a duty to other proletarians in order to abolish the class system. Or even if you're bourgeois, if you believe in Marxist principles, then you need to use your wealth, power, and influence in order to try to push for the eventual abolishment of your class. That's why Marx and Engels, like Engels was a business owner, he was a factory owner, and he used that wealth in order to subsidize Marx. He basically paid Marx's rent for like 30 years. And so Marx was like the ultimate bed blob. But the reason why people, even socialists, idealize Engels is because Engels was willing to push for the eventual abolishment of his class, even though he was bourgeois. And so that's why, like cops, for instance, will be called class traitors, because even though they're working class, they police the activities of other working class people, and therefore they're class traitors. I'll try to wrap this up quickly, but race consciousness is an argument from white nationalists, white supremacists, which is that the liberal order has tried to eliminate race as a concept, where it tries to eliminate the tribalism that's obvious between like Black and Hispanic and Jewish and white and this, that, the other. And so we've had these ethno-religious tribalisms for thousands of years, but liberalism has tried to like obliterate this concept, especially from like white Americans and Europeans, that there are differences between people. And so racial consciousness calls for effectively to notice that other people in other ethno-religious and racial tribal groups advocate exclusively for the benefit of people within their ethno-religious or racial tribal groups, and it tries to call on white people to defer to, at minimum, racial consciousness, where you prefer whites over all others, or ethno-religious supremacy, where if you're like an Anglo, then you have Anglo supremacy. And so that's where, you got to be careful with these consciousness tribalist identities, because they're effectively calling you to shift your brain away from liberalism in order to become like a militant towards their political tribe. And Connor is into 40K consciousness. Indeed. Mr. Rimbasic says, after the war, to be more precise, okay, Gazans as civilians uninvolved, people were never really given the chance. Okay. If Iran Hamas was able to outspend Israel in purchasing Trump coins, and Trump would be singing a different tune, maybe. His son-in-law is Jewish, so I do think ultimately he's going to be more... He probably has spent decades around rich New York Jews, so I don't think Trump would instantaneously be an anti-Zionist just if people paid him money. But I do agree that he's warming up the places like Qatar because they're effectively buying him off. 100%.
Watching live, you have to leave a like video.
Well, I think you got to be careful with this notion of class politics in the US, and for a completely different reason to what you said as well, because there is an element to the present system where Americans benefit greatly from doing things to other countries, or they could at least. They in many ways they don't, because Americans are too dumb to even advocate for getting their own fair share from imperialism. But
talk about that all the time too. Yeah,
there's two options here, which is like you can appeal to Americans as in like, I'm going to get you a bigger share of Bernie Sanders. I'm going to get you a bigger share of the spoils.
You see Hasan,
or you could appeal to
Hasan was glazed by the Daily Show and New York Times. The New York Times and the
and NBC. I don't know if he's going to say that, but Hasan got glazed by New York Times, then Daily Show, and NBC. He's becoming increasingly normalized.
Daily Show were glazing him. It was actually sick. Hang on, guys. My camera. 1 second. Just putting it back on.
Corey Peltzman says, did you see the thing that links Trump to Muhammad? No, but that's actually pretty funny. I do want, because Trump is very proud of his German ancestry. So I'm wondering where his Middle Eastern, North African ancestry comes from. Silver Jacket Man says, also, Engels could also write a compelling narrative. Ever read Capital? Marx was a bright guy, but a horribly boring writer. I'm unsurprised.
Always happens. So annoying. Yeah. What do you think of the setup? It's a beautiful setup, guys. Lol, Drew, display your dominance over the haters in Hasan Empanada. Make his screen tiny and yours huge. Put his tiny screen on your cactus. Very true. Very true. Yo, bro, my upper affluent background really put me on my Che Guevara era. Facts.
To Americans in a way where like they perhaps see beyond national lines and understand themselves as part of the broader whole of the world. And I think if you, like what you were talking about, the unions, for example, the average American labor union is like, it's basically like I wouldn't even call it a union, like in terms of like
race calls
sort of things that you can
like
imagine.
Unions, which is not like cop unions, but like corporate unions or unions that are completely servile to the interests of the Democratic Party under the AFL-CIO.
Not even just that, like unions of themselves in general, obviously narrowly focus on the interests of their members.
I understand that they might be a little bit boring getting into the union talk, but I do want to give them enough room that I don't miss any memes. So I'm gonna let it flow.
So that's why you get things like the American Big Tent labor unions being like, oh, like let's get the Lockheed Martin float at a parade or whatever. A huge victory for the Lockheed Martin employees. 10% raise.
Yeah. You're mixing and matching a couple different things, but yes, I know what you mean. Of course. Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying here is that
guys, isn't it so bad that America has a defense manufacturing?
I think you're looking far too much into the future.
That's crazy, guys.
I'm not even thinking about fucking socialism right now. And people think I'm like a radical communist terrorist. Like, I'm not thinking about any of that shit right now. There's so many more immediate concerns that we have to work with, the systems that we have now. Ultimately, I have no faith in Americans ever doing anything, unfortunately. Like, if you ask me, what are your solutions? I don't have solutions for you, buddy. We have a limited amount of time before she hits the fan. I would have thought previously that something like what is happening in Gaza would cause like a Vietnam level, like cultural like schism in the US.
Why would Gaza cause a Vietnam level cultural schism? Most of the people who protest against Vietnam were only mad about the draft. That's a real fact. The only people protesting, like majority of people who protest against the Vietnamese war were people who were mad about the draft. The majority was never the ho 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 Chi Minh guys. the majority was never the guys who were explicitly Viet Cong, pro-Viet Cong.
Hasn't actually caused anyone, not even in Europe, where places
20 years. And also, there was direct involvement with America.
Hasan leaves his stream to smoke 2 cigarettes every hour and play other people's videos. He could play his own stream clips while he's gone, but he hates seeing his younger self on his.
And Americans actually going there to fight, which I think is the reason why there was a lot more resistance. Americans are inherently very selfish people, and
Americans
drawn
are
into the
selfish
fight
people
themselves in a way that is more meaningful with a draft, not just like the poverty draft, or not just necessarily like a bunch of people that want to get a community.
Oh fuck! Sorry.
I'll challenge this.
Well, that Drew Pavlou and Hasan Piker effectively just agreed with themselves, or agreed with each other, where the main motivating factor wasn't a pro-peace movement in Vietnam. It was because there was Americans who were getting killed, and that was the same thing with the hostility to the war on terror. Like the war on terror, I don't think that we cared necessarily that Afghanistan was having a civil war or Iraq was having a civil war. We cared that Americans were dying in order to facilitate those civil wars, and that we were spending billions upon billions of dollars, up to, I think, a few trillion, in order to subsidize those wars. So it did come from a selfish perspective. Kingslayer Damocles says, I love how they're talking about supporting unions, but say not the cop unions, lol. Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to what I was saying, where class consciousness, you would have hostility towards law enforcement because they would be class traitors, because they make society peaceful when there should be a revolution in order to abolish the class structure. And by the way, for new people who are popping in, I'm not a leftist. I'm familiar with lefty talking points. Liz Falling Up says Lockheed is the most largest employer in my area. So yes, employees of Lockheed are working class. Liz Falling Up. So I think that the lefties who aren't as silly, they would say that, yeah, of course, an employee of Lockheed Martin is working class and therefore a part of the proletariat. However, they would argue that the proletariat in that case is being used in order to oppress international proletarian through like the American military industrial complex, and therefore they would be similar traders, working class traders to cops, basically. K-Sogo says, wrong. Many things the public was outraged with, mainly the death toll with no results. Okay. Silver Jacket Man says, I disagree with Marx's philosophy. Actually, no, I would argue his philosophy is outdated and was used by some of history's greatest monsters, but he was still intelligent. Grassroots says in response, the only reason I hate communism is because Karl Marx caught a ton in South Florida while he was busy being unemployed. Covers 100% of my opinion for sure. Okay, got it. All right. Who cares if he was unemployed? If you're talking about Marx? Well, I think that capitalists care, because if you're a naturally unproductive human being, why should you be prescribing how productive society manages itself? That's why I care. I like making fun of Marx because if he was like a bed blob who never did anything and he just had a rich friend who subsidized him in order to write stuff, and he's viewed as one of the most like influential economic philosophers of the past 2 or 3 centuries, you know, Marx observed the factory conditions of 19th century Europe, and he had decent critiques of what was going on within capitalism, failing to serve its domestic populations. However, I wonder if he actually worked 40 to 50 hours a week on a factory line, if he would realize that like there's dignity in work, you know, being able to raise your family is cool, being able to specialize is cool, being within a social hierarchy that rewards competence is cool. Like, I actually wonder if he would like realize and incorporate those into his works, because oftentimes what happens, you know, I would say within the Maoist context and the Soviet context, was it was effectively a revolution. I'm going to be a little bit mean, of bed blobs, right? What happened was some of the least productive members of society were put in charge of society, and then they came up with all sorts of stupid ideas about how to run the economy, and then they accidentally killed hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people through incompetence. So that's why it matters, in my opinion. Liz says, Marx was employed as a contract journalist until the Civil War disrupted his contacts with papers in New York. Still, like he's a writer, bro. He's a writer, you know, like the point is that, and I'm, you know what, I'm a live streamer. So who am I to say? But before I was a live streamer, I did 4 years I worked for 2 years before I joined the military. I did 4 years in the military. I worked full time while I got my 4-year degree. And then I also worked in law enforcement for 4 years. And then I worked in the private sector for another 4 years. So I, relatively speaking, have a education about being a member of the proletariat. K. Soko says, Marx makes great observations about the working class and failing to service them. We can learn a lot in the West reading into Marx, but that's like the same thing with like fascist literature as well, is oftentimes the social malaise that they are describing can be accurate, but then the prescriptions can be total dog water, right? So just because somebody is accurately describing the malaise of society doesn't mean that we should listen to their solutions. Some of their solutions are stupid. Curtis Yarvin, as an example, he's like the darling of the dissident right. And he writes a blistering criticism of modern capitalist liberal society, but then his solutions suck, you know? MTP 328 says bed blobs are a scourge on society. Sometimes. Media Network says, you set up that Israel-Palestine conversation with Destiny? Yeah, I basically told him, like, what time should we hang out? And on Sunday, he said, jump on stream at any time. And I said, I'm just going to ambush you during the week. And he said, okay. Because I wasn't ready to jump on stream yesterday. Mr. Bombastic says, I very much doubt the communist project failed because the leaders were unproductive. I mean, I think so. Stalin was like a bully and a murderer. 100% he was a bully and a murderer. So Silver, like, I don't think Stalin was like a pure proletarian who worked in the factories. I mean, he might have been, but he was a piece of garbage. Silverjack Man says, I think Marx's observations about economics in that unique time period were very astute. I also think anyone trying to map those principles onto a 20th century context in America is fundamentally flawed. Agreed. Sure, we don't have to adopt it, but we can learn from the observation and lessons learned, K. Soko says. Yeah. Interesting anecdote. Stalin was fascinated by big company bosses like Henry Ford, says Mr. Bombastic. Interesting. Grassroots says Georgism is precisely not that. It is the most virulent property rights oriented environment, but also say you only tax is on land. Interesting. Yeah, Christian Blair says Stalin's profession before joining the party was a bank robber. Yeah, so he was a predator. He wasn't a bed blob. He was productive, but he was productive towards malicious ends. Yeah, I agree, Grassroots. All right, anyways, moving on with the content.
But they
like I said, this is the exact same shit that I say.
Sanction Israel, or we're gonna put tariffs on American goods.
But two, if China wanted to, it's Israel's.
Or like they perhaps see beyond national lines and understand themselves as part of a broader whole of the world. And I think if you like what you were talking about the unions, for example, the average American labor union is like
real unions
it's
never
like
been tried. So
union, like in terms of like
under the
members at a parade or whatever. A huge victory for Lockheed Martin employees.
Okay, yeah. You're mixing and matching a whole different things, but yes, I know what you mean. Of course. Yeah.
Well,
Drew Pavlou is funded by far right. It's so funny. They're trying to spam the chat now by going, Drew Pavlou is funded by far right millionaire Simon Themic. That'd be goated if I was funded by him. That'd be fucking goated. I'm not, but I wish I still was. It'd be fucking beautiful. All he ever did was donate. Simon's a good bloke. He donated to my political campaign in 2022. That's basically the extent of my involvement. Be fucking goated if he wanted to pay for my streams too, but he doesn't. It's fine, guys. It's fine. I literally just live off Twitter ad revenue and I work part-time.
What I'm saying here is that what you were going on about there was about class politics.
Yeah, dude, I can't even properly pay my rent. And it's just like funny that they're going, oh, Simon Fenwick's fucking funding Drew. It'd be great if Simon Fenwick wanted to fund all my live streams. We'd fucking love it. It'd be goated.
USA, I need to get people on board with this idea that socialism isn't bad. I think you're looking far too much.
America's the selfish people. Speaking from experience, yeah, facts.
Socialism right now.
So Keiko Soko says Stalin was definitely worse than Hitler, but had Hitler lived on, who would have ultimately been worse? So I think Hitler is morally objectionable to a greater degree because he killed people for immutable characteristics like being Jewish, disabled, gay, Roma, etc. With Stalin, he killed people not just for immutable characteristics. Like I heard there was like homosexual and some Jewish purges. But the main thing was being a thought crime, right? The main thing was being an opponent of communism or socialism or revolutionary communism and socialism. And so I think it would probably bear out the same. where Hitler killed less, but was ideologically more evil. Because bear in mind, liberals kill for liberalism as well. Liberal democracies go to war and they fight and kill in the name of mixed economy capitalism and liberal democracy. So killing for thought crimes isn't the craziest thing in the world. It's bad, but it's not the craziest thing in the world. And so I still think Stalin ultimately would have had a higher body count just because of how universal socialism can be made. Yeah. So morally, Hitler is worse. Through numbers, Stalin is worse. K-Soko says, number of political dissidents murdered or disappeared, number of surrounding countries absorbed. Remember, Stalin killed people for no reason, like played piano or drew pictures or wrote books? Yeah. It was very arbitrary. He was obviously like a psychotic dictator. Was Stalin even the prisoners to be executed were considered parts of society? Says Mr. Bombastic. Liz following up says, I prefer to read about Marx as character in writings taking a different tenet when you know he was suffering chronic illness, which science today think was hidradenitis suppurativa. Interesting. K-Soko says, I agree, Shelley! Exclamation point. Well, very good. Silver Jacket Man says, I don't like rating dictators' badness. Like, was Pol Pot worse than Stalin? Yes. He killed a higher percentage of his people. I don't know. Feels like comparing baseball cards. Just suffice to say that they're bad. I disagree. I don't mind stacking up the morality and percentages of murderous dirtbags. Corey Peltzman says, the only difference between Stalinism and Hitlerism is Stalin clapped with everyone while everyone clapped with Hitler. For Hitler. Gotcha. Interesting. All right. I'm going to use the restroom, but I'm going to continue the content by playing it in the background. I'm going to chair react to a Hasan Piker piece of content. So I'll be right back. I'm going to use the restroom, but quick shill time before I move on. Be sure to like the stream if you haven't liked it already. That lets people know that we're live and that we're in the algorithm. They'll come over and they'll hang out with us. Then be sure to subscribe or follow if you're not subscribed or following already. Engage in the chat. Engage in the comment section on the VODs. And then if you have money burning a hole in your pocket, it's never required, but super chats are already appreciated. I want to shout out our big boy Old School for giving our first super chat of the day. Let me go ahead and continue the content. I'll be right back.
People think I'm like,
you want to cry for that, absolutely.
I'm not thinking about any of that shit right now. There's so many more immediate concerns that we have to.
Sorry, not being mean. Yeah, no, I know, bro. Dude, we're on the same side. I wish I'll fucking fund it. I wish Mosab would.
Like if you ask me what are your solutions,
gold parachute, gold bar.
We have a limited amount of time.
Imagine that.
Instead
of fucking worrying about my rent,
like what's happening in Gaza would cause like a Vietnam level like cultural.
This is the Vietnam.
They're drawn into the fight themselves in a way that is more meaningful with a draft, not just like the poverty draft, or not just necessarily like a bunch of people that want to get a communications degree for free, going out there and getting their dicks blown off while defending some fucking poppy field in the Korengal Valley, but like literally a draft. Only then will selfish Americans actually get up to aggressively protest in a militant fashion in a way that would truly harm the overall interest of the American State Department.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It's the whole thing. It's the whole reason why we're in the place where we're in. The U.S. does not have a rival anymore who needs to compete with that much in terms of geopolitics. China, I mean,
Australian Nazis started the Simon Fenwick rumor because Drew criticized Tom Sewell one time in 2023. Did they start it? That's fucking funny. I mean, it's fucking funny. Just as I suspected. I don't know, man. I could be a turncoat. Drew is funded by Empanadas and the haters' mum for services. Watching slop and not prepping. Yeah, guys, we've got a big debate tonight. We've got a big debate. It's going to be Adu the socialist with maybe Jordan van der Lem, Purple Pringers. And we're going to have great debate tonight. It'll be very interesting. Drew, if I had a donut, I would instantly sell out my morals and ideals. So true, bro.
I don't know what your stance is on China, but China doesn't do shit. China doesn't want to do shit. China just wants to mind its own business. And that is a huge problem, really. If China tried to do something meaningful regarding what's happening in Gaza, it would probably happen. Like they would be able to do something about it very easily.
I talked about this just yesterday. I 100% agree. There was like a fake TikTok of like Americans dropping in aid that actually killed Palestinians, ironically enough. But they were literally recycling the American aid being dropped into Gaza, but this time like saying China was doing it. And they were like, oh my God, how wonderful that China's dropping aid into Gaza. And one, that was fake. China didn't do that. But two, if China wanted to, it's Israel's second largest trading partner. They could literally fucking say, hey, we are going to bring in our military and our NGOs to distribute aid on the Gaza Strip. What is Israel going to do? Say no to that? They can't fucking do that.
Why would
any country
way fucking more than that? Like we saw with the tariff shit, how quickly Trump folded in the face of actual economic consequences from China. They could do something like that to the US if they wanted to. They could do it to Israel. Obviously, it would come at some sort of cost to themselves, but Trump would fold in 2 fucking seconds if China was like, hey, we're going to sanction Israel, or we're going to put tariffs on American goods or something like that. We're going to make your shit cost more. But China does not do that. Yeah. And the USSR was in a position, wasn't in an economic position, but it was in like a military position and a geopolitical position where it could put a ton of pressure on. So now we have a situation in the world today where the US is, it's not totally uncontested, but it is way, way more uncontested than it ever has been before. And we're looking at that in Gaza right now, and I can't tell you what to do about it at all. I can tell you what individuals
they're mad that the CCP didn't invade Gaza.
I'm not going to. Yeah. But still, even if we all did that, I don't think it would change that much in the grand scheme of things.
I don't disagree with you on anything. And also, like I said, this is the exact same shit that I say on my stream for the most part. I'll take it one step further. As far as like China
fears
in undermining American footholds in its own backyard in the Philippines. I feel like if China operated in the same way as like America did, or even the fucking USSR did for that matter, they could just like arm the Philippine Maoists instead of working with the Duterte government as they did to disarm them and to actively work against them. That's a real destabilizing force in the country, and China doesn't even use it. Instead, they're just doing water spraying operations with their Coast Guard while simultaneously trying to set up an ASEAN security partnership where the Philippines.
Is Hasan seriously advocating that China back the Philippine Maoists? What the actual fuck? These guys are fucking mental.
Listen, I have to agree with Drew Pavlou, okay? So effectively, Hasan Piker, U.S. citizen, son of Turkish millionaire Mehmet Piker, is advocating. We're going to take a little. We're going to take a little Google Map geopoll time just to keep it spicy and actually keep it, transformative, right? So the Philippines, for those of you who are unaware, the Philippines were originally colonized by the Spanish, and then during the Spanish-American War, the United States colonized the Philippines. And so they speak Spanish, they speak English, and then their culture is like Indo-Pacific, oceanic, culture, because they exist in an island chain within the context of Oceania, which I think is Australia, Asia, which is, India and China. And so they exist at like this like crossroads of humanity within the island chain. But what's going on is I think there's like 7,000, if you count the smallest islands, there's like 7,000 islands in the Philippines. And so they have Manila, which is the capital, but then they have all these other islands. And so there's Islamist rebels, there's communist rebels who are on these different islands, and they can effectively island jump in order to avoid like Philippine security forces, because it's so difficult to rule this entire territory as a single nation state. They do their best, but it's very difficult. And so the United States has offered military and trade assistance to the central government in order to help them, one, develop an economy that isn't totally reliant on tourism, but then two, develop sufficiently sophisticated security forces that they can fight the insurgents and the rebels. But the truth is, it's hard as hell. So we got American citizen Hasan Piker saying that China, the last standing communist regime of the 20th century, should be shipping weapons and instigating for Maoist rebels in the Philippines. Now, I mean, I do the opposite, right? I say paramilitary organizations should 100% be fighting like dirty wars against communists. But that's so funny to me that effectively he's like, yeah, I want to repeat the Cold War. I want to repeat the Cold War, but instead of the Soviet Union supplying all the military manpower and training to random communist rebels across the world, I want it to be China now. And this guy's supposed to be my co-citizen. I'm supposed to view him as a peer within my country. His vote counts the same as mine. I hate this guy. Liz following up says, Pol Pot is worse because his plans made even less sense and were all the more deadly. Yeah, Pol Pot is almost a uniquely evil person in history. He actually makes He makes Hitler look like warm and fuzzy sometimes. Grassroots Hegemon says, if the stereotype is true, then you must, whoop, hey, sexism. He kept docking the war manufacturing over too tall of requests and asked too late to realize his own advancement in technology, if applied earlier, would have changed the war had he not went with Messerschmitt for jets. They would have won air dominance much earlier. K-Soko is talking about German war strategy, and I have heard this before. I don't know how confirmed it is, but the argument is that German vehicles were over-engineered. And so German tanks were argued that they were substantively better than the Sherman and substantively better than the T-34. But the T-34 and the Sherman eventually adopted cannons that were able to punch through German armor. And so while the quality of the tanks, when they were unchallenged, when they were facing infantry, they would just like kick ass. When German tanks were supported by German infantry in a fight where the enemy didn't have much anti-armor, then the Germans would kick some serious ass. However, when you overwhelm them with like 3 or 4 Shermans, the Shermans are going to win. So the Shermans ultimately were kind of like, they had paper armor. You know, a single tank shell or anti-tank shell would punch through a Sherman. But when you have 4 of them, the Americans are going to win eventually. There was some gun where the Sherman had an underpowered gun, and then they just swapped out the gun, and then they started doing real damage. I forget what the exact narrative was, but you know, any tankers or history nerds are welcome to correct me in chat. That's a popular narrative. I'm sure it's more nuanced than the people who are pro German tanks would have you believe, and I'm sure it's more nuanced than just like the American technology is awesome people. Effectively, this is what's really funny about relearning history from a more nuanced perspective, is that when I was raised, America was just like we're going to dominate, right? We have such cool technology. We got bombers, we got tanks, we got this, we got that. But when you grow up, you kind of realize that we didn't win because we have the coolest technology. As a matter of fact, some of our technology sucked, but we had the ability to replicate it and replace it 1 billion times faster than the Germans or the Imperial Japanese did. An example of this is the Japanese Zero. This could be another urban legend that I'm spelling, that I'm spreading misinformation on. But the Japanese Zero was an incredibly light and fast fighter. And so a lot of Pacific pilots genuinely feared fighting the Zero because it was actually like a really dangerous fighter to go up against. But what ended up happening was, as the war progressed, the Japanese kept losing their most skilled pilots, and they weren't able to replace those pilots. And then also with the Japanese Zero, they could build them faster because they built them out of fairly like cheap and light materials, but they just couldn't build them as fast as the United States. And so the United States, what was it? We had like the F-4U Corsair, which is a beautiful plane. So we had the Corsair, which it didn't have as good of a turning radius as the Zero, I don't think. We had the Warhawk. What was it? The World War II Navy fighter plane. So there's the Corsair. I forget what this one is called, but it's super famous. It's really ugly, crazy famous. Is it the Thunderbolt? I forget what this one is. So there's the Avenger, ugly as hell. Corsair, beautiful, but not as good as that one. The Dauntless, which almost looks like a Zero clone. The Hellcat, that's a classic. So the point is that America was just able to outproduce Japan and Germany. Sorry for the history rant, but I don't want to listen to these guys talk about unions forever. You know, I want to talk about World War II planes sometimes. Liz Falling Up says, protest doesn't work, didn't stop Vietnam, didn't stop Iraq. Protest is going to work. We actually have to shift the system from within. Yes and no. I do think that popular support for Iraq and Vietnam was so low that ultimately the politicians did realize that they had to bring people home, or else it wasn't going to or else they would actually get voted out eventually. Conserve liberalism says archipelago, got to use that 3000 IQ vocabulary. Bro, one of my friends called me out on that the other day. We were hanging out. I don't get to go out very often, but my wife allowed me to go out with the friends over the weekend, and we went to this like canal. I'll just go ahead and dox myself a little bit. It's Wakaiva Island. And so it's this island with a canal right next to it, and people are just like drinking beer, hanging out. And I use the word diaspora naturally in the conversation, and she's like, ooh, la da da, one of them $14 words. And I was like, come on, man, like you're an English major, why are you giving me shit about saying the word diaspora? What the hell? Sacred Snow says soon they're going to speak brain rot when the passport bros finish the cultural invasion. True. Christian Valera says, let's be honest, if the Chinese did that, we wouldn't do anything. It would be like proxy wars, like the Cold War. Yeah, but we would still, if there were Maoist rebels who were being armed by China, we 100% would back the Central Philippine government, and then we would also send special forces to train their guys and probably to hunt communist guerrillas. Why not get more anti-tank guns? Lol. I mean, they're cheaper, they're easier to operate, 100%. They're just not as mobile. Silver Jacket Man says Hasan's arguably supporting terrorism there too. Google the Naxalites, one of the biggest terrorist groups on earth, and they are communist revolutionaries, 100%. Hey, hold on. I didn't do a sexism. It might not have been you. I think it was Void of Parrot, actually. If I remember correctly, Cotter, you are in a swing state, so your vote is worth more than Hasan's. True. Don't F with American industrial capacity. We fight two opponents at the same time in different hemispheres, says Christian Valeris. I agree. N-Sort says Sherman slander in 2025. Well, I think I think the Sherman did have paper armor, but we just produced a lot of them. The old saying, built like a Sherman tank. Exactly. Mr. Bombastic says tank versus tank battle seems like a very expensive thing to be avoided. Well, I mean, we're avoiding it in the modern context. We use drones instead. Sacred Snow says also Tigers were extremely expensive to produce and repair while the Shermans were pumped out like mid-sized sedans. Exactly. Fastest fighter in World War II. I think this could be an urban legend, but I feel like the Zero was like partially made out of wood. Was the Japanese Zero the fastest fighter plane? No, the Mitsubishi A6M Zero was not the fastest fighter plane. While the Zero was known for its speed and maneuverability, the Grumman Hellcat and P-47 Thunderbolt were faster and more powerful. But were the Japanese Zeros partially made of wood? Were Japanese Zeros made out of wood? No, the Mitsubishi A6M Type Zero was constructed of a new lightweight aluminum alloy called Extra Super Duraluminum, or ESD. Okay. I heard a rumor that they were partially made out of wood, which is how they stayed so lightweight. So feel free to spread that misinformation on the internet. But the way American planes, sorry, we're having World War II plane autism moment. But the reason why these planes were so powerful was because we slapped huge engines on them. That's how we got the speed. Grassroots says, we won because we had a disgusting amount of industrial capacity. Yes. We won because of the mistakes Nazis made. Spitfire. True. I love the Spitfire. All right. Anyways, you guys are having World War II airplane autism as well, which I appreciate, but we should probably get back into the content. All right. Well, let's focus up. Everybody focus up. Oh, sorry. Quick chill time. Like the stream if you haven't liked it already. Engage in chat. That way it drives us in the algorithm. What is it? Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Comment on the VODs if you're watching the VOD. And then also super chats are never required. Always appreciated. Let's continue.
Are the only fucking...
Mr. Z, your page is buzzing. Stop watching the video at 2 speed. You can't even comprehend what they're saying at 1 speed. Really? Look, I'll do 1.75. 1.75.
Thank
party
you.
that refuses to sign on.
Otherwise, we're going to be here for 3 hours and it'll be fucking boring. Who fucking cares what they're saying? Chris, they attacked me at one point, so we do care. We do care. Free Palestine. So true. Free Palestine from Hamas. I do agree with that. China famously a nation that prioritizes abstract moral stands over self-serving bullying. So true. Now he supports Chinese naval intimidation. Holy fuck, dude.
to sign on because they're comfortable being a unsinkable aircraft carrier for the United States of America. So they like
Daniel Meyer. I don't know if I've seen you in chat before, but he says it was trains a few streams ago, really going for autism bingo. Yeah.
I'm not, I live in America. You live in Argentina, as far as I know. So obviously I'm not going to sit here and be like, Xi Jinping should do this, but that is my assessment. But clearly whatever they're doing has worked so far, at least in terms of like positioning China as a global hegemonic power. But yes, I do recognize that they're being self-interested to a degree where no one seems to care about doing anything to stop the Nazi Israel government from conducting its live-streamed child holocaust.
I mean, ultimately, it's just materialism in the end. China is
live stream child holocaust. So I saw a horrific video that I'm not even going to describe for you the other day, but it was effectively the remains of someone being brought out from rubble. And I do think the IDF is worth criticizing in the regards that 80% of the buildings within Gaza are destroyed. So I'm not trying to minimize what Israel is doing. However, I think it needs be remarked that if Israel wanted to, they could have killed all 2.2 million people within Gaza. They have the technological capacity to do it. And I don't just mean nukes. They have enough large bombs. They have enough artillery shells. They have enough tank shells. They have enough machine gun munitions that they could just incrementally walk across all of Gaza and shoot and kill every single man, woman, and child that lives in Gaza. Okay? What happens instead, as far as I know, is that they've used the rules of engagement where they see some scumbag who has an AK, an RPG, an IED, whatever, and then they hit that dude with a 500-pound bomb, and then as a result, a dozen civilians also die along with that militant. So that has added up to, within the past, this started in 2023, so it's been like a year and a half, I guess, because it was October of 23. So within a year and a half, they've killed 65,000 people instead of 2 million. So yes, it's a horror show. Yes, it's a slow moving horror show. Yes, the IDF deserves some criticism, but I would say that the way they characterize it is not accurate to how bad it could actually be if Israel dedicated itself to a Holocaust-style genocide. So I think that level of nuance needs to be kept in this conversation. Well, QC says, if I'm remembering correctly, it was the kamikaze planes at Pearl Harbor made of wood due to their burning ability to create more destructive force, according to my 8th grade history teacher. Based. Sacred Snow says, we should dedicate one stream per week to spurging out about random historical topics. True. Kingslayer says, we are 3,000 IQ, which means we go, ooh, shiny. True. We have ADD because of our high IQ. It's true. Grassroots says, I'm more of a train autist than a plane autist. My bad. Yeah. K-Sogo says, no wood was used in a zero in Pearl Harbor. The wood used in additional torpedoes that made them shallow in the harbor. Oh, because of the buoyancy? That's interesting. Bud123 says, does Israel want to take over the Gaza Strip and expel all Palestinians from it, drive Hamas's ability to recruit and replenish their ranks? No idea. I don't even think they know. I don't think they know if they can get away with it, but that's the point, is that Trump is trying to facilitate it by saying that 1 million Gazans can go to Libya. Yeah. Anyways, let's continue.
Extremely good at using the global system that the US set up, so why would they want to challenge it? That's how it is everything. The Arab states, half of them are US puppets, the other half, they would probably get annihilated if they tried to do anything uncoordinated without the US puppet states helping them. In many other cases, like, I feel like Israel has become something of an inconvenience for its allies at this point, but they're sort of too far in to really do anything about it. At this, like, it's been like 50, 60, 70 years of nothing but full support for Israel. So at this point, what are they going to do, especially given that they would have to be, like, the US would have to be the one to really pull the plug, and that's not going to fucking do it, is it? So, I mean, it's probably like the bleakest situation that I could imagine right now. Obviously, like, Americans theoretically, as a block of people, like average Americans have a decent amount of power to challenge this, but they also themselves have no real reason, no real motivation.
Facts.
Ultimately, what you said about Vietnam probably rings true. It does not affect them that much. It affects some of them psychologically, and that is about it. They don't see any.
They literally worship
consequences
the
from it.
third world. I don't even know
there has
why.
not been like a massive adverse reaction that could turn them against it. Like,
who even fucking knows why? Who
for example, like the
cares?
IRA, for example, did a lot to like instill like fatigue in the British public on their government to try and look for some sort of solution to the troubles.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. There's nothing like it anywhere. Not at all.
He thinks there's no domestic terrorist attack going.
Historically that has existed.
Wait, guys, let's go back.
Where
He said there should be something like the IRA.
Americans theoretically, as a block of people, like average Americans, have a decent amount of power to challenge this, but they also themselves have no real reason, no real motivation for doing so, because ultimately, you know, what you said about Vietnam probably rings true. It does not affect them that much. It affects some of them psychologically, and that is about it. They don't see any material consequences from it. You know, there has not been like a massive adverse reaction that could turn them against it. Like, for example, like the IRA, for example, did a lot to like instill like fatigue in the British public on their government to try and look for some sort of solution to the troubles.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. There's nothing like it anywhere. Not at all.
Well, there's no situation.
So what's funny about this line of argumentation from BadEmpanada is that I don't feel like he said anything descriptively incorrect, which is effectively that Israel can do what it wants to do right now because half of the Arab states have already normalized relations with Israel. And as a result, they don't feel like they can really like call them out militarily or economically. And it's just not worth it to them in order to do so. And then the half of Arab states that would like go against Israel, they're not going to because they need the pro-Israel Arab states in order to have any kind of efficacy at all. And the truth is that whoever steps up is going to get stomped on by Israel and the United States. This is 100% descriptively accurate. The question is whether or not you believe it's good. Now, what's kind of funny about BadEmpanada is by inference, he says that there's no international force that is willing to step up to American hegemony. Well, there was a decade ago. I don't know if you guys remember this, but it's ISIS and that the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. It's because they wanted to create a global caliphate. They wanted to start in Iraq and Syria. They resisted Western hegemony. They accused all the other Arab states of being patsies and of being the American lapdog and the Israeli lapdog. And what ended up happening is they did do something similar to the Troubles where they launched a bunch of terrorist attacks in the United States and in Europe. And so that level of terrorism, while Hasan, Piker, and, you know, BadEmpanada are cheering this on and saying like, oh, yeah, I wish we did have an IRA. I wish we did have these people. Well, they're making all of the logical excuses that lead you up to ISIS. Their only objection to ISIS would be that ISIS killed more Muslims than it killed Americans, but that's true of almost every jihadist organization. And so while they will specifically, probably not BadEmpanada, but probably Hasan, he'll find reasons to object to and criticize ISIS, but his worldview leads you to the fact that they want an ISIS-style organization to stand up to American hegemony. And so that excuses the Bataclan attack. That excuses the Bastille Day truck attacks. That excuses Pulse nightclub, which is 30 minutes away from my house. They're perfectly okay with civilians getting slaughtered. So why wouldn't I be 100% hostile to these pieces of garbage if they're logically leading people up to the point that excusing violence against civilians is okay, and they logically lead up to the point that ISIS would be an okay organization? It's crazy. It's actually crazy to me. Kingslayer says, is this calling for terrorism to demoralize the American population into not supporting Israel? Yes. By inference, that is what they're talking about. K. Soko says, here in Cleveland, we made lots of war machines sent to England, planes and tanks. Based? According to Jordanian dude I talked to, he may be just mad that they assassinated Abdullah. If you're talking about what? The Palestinians? Or ISIS? Yeah. I know that there was some intrigue between the Jordanian state and jihadist organizations where they thought that Jordan was going to be more supportive of the Islama fascist organizations, and when he went against them, they started trying to target the king of Jordan. Whew. Void of Parrot says, realistically, the Arab states couldn't do a thing to stop Israel from going Palpatine after they got nukes. Kind of. Well, QC, you could also just get in really close, because if you stationed all your military on their border without nukes getting triggered, and then you invaded, and then you got in close with the Israeli population, is Israel going to nuke its easternmost cities in order to take out the invading army. Now, they might do that if it got desperate enough, but I still think it's possible to have a conventional war even against a state that has nukes. This is what happens when you skip comments. Well, my bad. I'm talking about terrorism over here. What's your definition of terrorism? I mean, probably the normal one. What is it? It's like illegal violence against civilians in order to achieve a political goal, something like that. We can take a look at it real quick. In terrorism, like obviously civilians get killed in military operations, but in terrorism, the point is to kill civilians. Terrorism is generally defined as the unlawful use of force and violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objective. Yeah. So they try to flatten the unlawful use. They try to say, well, governments use force and violence against people and property to intimidate and coerce them into a certain action. But the difference here is the targets being civilian and unlawful. If you don't believe in like laws, or if you don't believe in distinctions between military targets and civilian targets, I can't help you. Direct targeting of civilians for a political cause. Yes. This is the What is the griller doing? This is the grill hottie salute. I can't see what the griller's doing because I'm old and blind. Israeli historically has pointed its nuclear warheads at Damascus twice. Well, terrorism definition is nebulous because they count violence against state actors, military, and law enforcement. I can, but at the same time with guerrilla warfare, oftentimes there's like asymmetric warfare, which I do consider different than terrorism. All right.
Situation historically that has existed where the captive population has been this thoroughly, at least in contemporary history that I can think of, where the captive population has been this thoroughly ethnically cleansed.
Nah, the content must flow.
And in broad daylight without any sort of material support to...
Holy shit, BadEmpanada complains on his live stream with Hasan that there's no IRA-style terrorist group in America carrying out terrorist attacks to make the public fatigued by support for Israel. That's just fucking mental. He's literally advocating terrorist attacks.
To offer from other countries, right? Like you have no Cuban example, you have no USSR example, and the role that they might have played in the ANC's efforts to resist against the apartheid structure in South Africa. And you certainly don't have American congresspersons doing arms trafficking to Hamas in the way that they did to the IRA. You had American conservative politicians of Irish background doing arms shipments to the IRA at a certain point. You could fundraise for the IRA in American bars, right? So very, very different set of statements.
He thinks you should be able to fundraise for Hamas.
To offer from other countries, right? Like you have no Cuban example, you have no USSR example, and the role that they might have played in the ANC's efforts to resist against the apartheid structure in South Africa. And you certainly don't have American congresspersons doing arms trafficking to Hamas in the way that they did to the IRA. You had American conservative politicians of Irish background doing arms shipments to the IRA at a certain point. You could fundraise for the IRA in American bars, right? So very, very different set of circumstances here. And this coming also after the
Yeah, you want to know what the difference is? This is actually really funny being of Irish background, okay? So the reason why I think it was socially and culturally acceptable in the Northeast in particular to fundraise for the IRA was because the Brits had occupied Northern Ireland, and the IRA did go toe-to-toe with the army. Like 90% of their targets, correct me if I'm wrong, by the IRA. The provisional IRA during its 25-year campaign killed over 1,700 people. This has included approximately 1,000 members of the British security forces and 500 to 644 civilians. The IRA's campaign primarily took place in Northern Ireland, but also extended to England and mainland Europe. So 1,700 people. Let's do a quick math calculation. 1,000 into 1,700 is 60% were security forces of the casualties of the IRA. And then not just that, but I'm going to argue that the IRA is probably going to argue in turn that a substantive amount of the civilians that they attacked were, you know, militia members of English militias, because those 100% existed. And then also they were anti-Irish politicians because they did do assassinations as well. So you could add in another 5 or 10% here if you want to be overly charitable to the IRA. And then same thing with the ANC. How many people did the ANC kill? The ANC is the African National Congress. They were communists, but they also did terrorist organizations. How many people did the ANC kill? ANC killed mostly civilians, but I almost guarantee you 1,500 people over the course of 15 years. And I don't even think that's accurate. I think it was around 200 when I was looking at the original one. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the details. But the point is that I'm pretty sure that like 30 or 40% of the people who were killed by the ANC were like cops. So let's say that IRA is at 60%. Let's say that the ANC is at like 30 or 40%. And then let's just do math on the Gazan attacks of October 7th, 2023. So I think it was like 1,200 killed. How many people were killed in the October 7th attack? Start of the Gazan war. Losses. So 815 civilians, 400 security forces for a total of around 1,200. So 815 divided by 1195, 70%. So 70% of the intentionally targeted people. Oh, and then 251 taken captive as well. So I'll go ahead and add that to the tally because I'm going to use that. So 815 plus 251 is 1,066. Divide by 1,400. So 76% of the people who were targeted by Hamas were civilians. And every time the IRA targeted civilians, they lost support. So the fact that Hamas Piker over here in BadEmpanada can't understand why people aren't doing fundraisers openly in the United States for Hamas. They just support terrorism. They just think that killing civilians is okay. It is what it is. I can't be any more descriptive than that. They just think that killing civilians is okay as long as it's for the right cause. Well, and what I'll say in response to that is, okay, then I don't care about the United States invading Iraq and invading Afghanistan and kicking off civil wars where 90% of the casualties of those wars was jihadists killing Muslims. Like, obviously, I do care because it affects the future of the world. Obviously, I do care that people were murdered. I do care about those things. And I do think it was geopolitically disastrous. However, if you're going to be callous about the intentional targeting of civilians, then I'm not going to cry tears for you when you whine about the war on terror. Why would I? If 90% of the people killed were killed by jihadists, I'm not taking moral culpability for them. Those are locals. Those are people in Afghanistan and in Iraq who killed their neighbors. That wasn't coalition forces. Biz D says, you don't know how much I want to call out of work today, but Jesus hates a pussy. It's true. J-Hap. Kingslayer Damocles says the ANC specifically targeted government infrastructure. Basically, all the civilian deaths were from mines set along governmental supply routes that normal citizens used. When the ANC realized it was hitting civilians, they removed the mines. Yeah. So why did the ANC and why do the IRA get more support than Hamas? We just answered that question in the past 5 to 10 minutes. I don't even think it's a question that Hasan Piker and BadEmpanada are genuinely asking. I think they're asking that question because they want to conflate the two. Because if you support the IRA but you don't support Hamas, why not? And a lot of people are going to have difficulty answering that question. And then the same thing with the ANC. They're muddying the waters on purpose so they can support terrorism. 100%.
The expanded surveillance state in the aftermath of the war on terror.
K-Soko says, I don't care. Then I say, I do care. Lol. I love it. Listen, in the meme wars, you should be more callous. You should be more psychopathic. You should be whatever, because apparently Hasan can be a total sociopath apologizing for terrorist activity. But the truth is, I do care about human beings and I don't want to die. I don't want them to die in horrific ways. even if they're a part of a different ideological tribe or a different ethno-religious tribe. I don't want them to die horribly. Even if 70% of the Palestinians support Hamas, that doesn't mean that I want random children and women to be killed. And it doesn't mean that I don't understand the men who are violently opposed to Israel because they've been born in terrible circumstances that Israel has largely imposed on them. I don't want them to die horribly, you know, but I also don't want them to murder people. The IRA popularity was single-handedly propped up by the Black and Tan song. Yeah, Dropkick Murphys needs to do a pop punk cover of Black and Tans. It is a fun song.
A shit ton of social conditioning that Americans totally signed off on in terms of like Muslims and Arabs being worthy of only death and destruction. And they're all, you know, rapist, barbaric hordes. They're all ISIS.
Yeah, I don't want to fall into that trap, but I swear to God, Hasan Piker makes this trap worse through his rhetoric.
This kind of attitude is reflected broadly in American society or in Western society in general. But that's the silver lining that I see, because in spite of all of that, I think there's only so much dead children that the average Americans can look at and go, this is completely unacceptable. Like, this is fucked up. Now, you're not wrong when you say there's not enough mobilization happening. People are not fucking shit up in an effort to make this costly, this undying allegiance to Israel costly. And you're not wrong on that. But I do think that given how much the public sentiment has shifted in such a short period of time, even though it was incredibly costly in terms of the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians at this point, even though the numbers say, 63,000? I think that's a severe undercount. There is still, I think that there is still always, like, it's something that I will always push for, regardless of how hopeless I feel. Is to mobilize Americans.
You can try your best. It is absolutely true that in an ideal world,
like, conversation today. It was literally 2 hours ago.
To mobilize people in the US, Europe, Australia, Canada, you know, these places which are Israel's primary backers. And, you know, many of us have mobilized. Many people have tried to do stuff, protested and stuff. But clearly, these governments are immune to this sort of pressure at this point. They don't give a shit about it. Like, it's because really almost nothing has really changed. Like, Israel is literally under investigation for genocide at the ICJ, for example. I would say at this point, they are probably actually going to, it's going to be ruled against them. They're actually going to be found to have committed genocide in Gaza. And that is a huge fucking deal for a UN court, because they've done nothing to convince the court that they aren't doing that, you know, ever since the case started. But I mean, I might be wrong there, because it is still a UN court. You know, it's still a court that is ultimately run by the US and all of this, even though pretend it isn't. But I mean, a lot of that is going to be, all these people in the court, like very prominent judges who would not want to sully their name by making an intentionally stupid decision just in the name of politics. So we'll see what happens there. But my point is, like, when you have basically like both of the most important judicial bodies in international law have serious cases against Israel, and you also have like hundreds of thousands of people in the street protesting in almost every single one of the countries that is supporting Israel. In some cases, like,
by the way, guys, we've got 30 people watching the stream. If you can leave a like, it'll help us reach more people, the algorithm. So please leave a like.
Week after week.
Drew's so right here. He's spitting so many facts. We have 50 people on our stream. Please like the stream. That way other people know that we're live. They'll come in and join us in the chat. Leave comments on the VODs. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Super chats are appreciated. And then Grassroots says, I would say I'm a pretty hard Zionist, but in service of that, Israel needs to remove themselves from the West Bank. We've been over this before. Effectively, whenever it comes to military operations, I think that the United States, the way that we did Operation Phantom Fury, Fallujah 2, is the way to go as far as like urban warfare goes, where you effectively give the civilian population 6 months to clean out. Now, that gives the insurgents 6 months to prepare, but also when you go in, you can have a really loose ROE, because anyone who's still in the city is either somebody who wasn't able to escape, so you probably shouldn't kill those people indiscriminately, or it's a jihadist. And so 50-50, if you have collateral damage, like, yeah, it's bad, but you gave them 6 months to get out, right? That I think that's more than reasonable. And then when it comes to Israel, I think they need to recognize that Muslims of the region, Palestinians, they need a place that they can call their own, and they need a place that is development. And if they don't acknowledge the Palestinian right to live in places that they have lived historically for a few centuries, then they're going to have terrorist attacks. It is what it is. So my sympathy extends to Israel a lot, in that they, I think an Israeli Jewish state needs to exist in order to guarantee the security of the future of the Jewish people. However, it only extends so far. When you start massacring civilians, which I'm not saying they're doing, they're just targeting civilians to be willy-nilly. But when you hit a jihadist with a 500-pound bomb and you kill a few dozen civilians, like, that's a predictable result. You know what you're doing, right?
It's clear that something has shifted here, and like from how things were 34 years ago, especially. Yeah. And the number one thing that I can think of is somehow the internet has made it easier to ignore this shit. I can't exactly articulate how exactly, but it's obviously the most prominent change in the world aside from the fall of the Soviet Union, which is probably bigger, I'm
going to work out while I let them yap. So I missed part of my back workout last week, and I missed part of my shoulders workout this week. So I'm doing back and shoulders.
I forgot where I was going with that, actually. I'm a fucking moron.
Well,
yeah. What I was going to say was like, I don't know what I was going to say.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say is
perception.
I recognize all of that, and part of why I try to communicate these issues in the way that I do, even though I say almost the exact same things that you have said so far in this conversation, not signing off on everything that you say off stream or on social media.
I said the exact same things.
But we're having a productive conversation right now. But
I'll yell at each other. I have to play video clips over you like Ethan Klein did.
Yeah, I'll move into that in a second. But the reason why, for example, why did I broach the subject of Israel with Bernie on First Amendment grounds and the unlawful detention and possible deportation of Mohammed Khalil? Because I understand Bernie Sanders' position. I don't agree with it, and I think it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous position to have. It's repulsive to maintain the idea that Israel has a right to defend itself. 19 months into Israel's.
Yeah, have you seen the videos of how Bernie talks to pro-Palestine protesters?
Yeah, I have. From like 2000 and there's like one from like
some of them are recent.
There's one that's more recent where people come up to him while he's walking, but he's an old.
He really gets. Yeah, I don't know if I would call it that. I think it's the top.
You know what I think it is?
He knows what I'm talking about.
You know what I think it is? I think it's what Bernie did to the average Democrat and the resentment that the average Democrat feels when Bernie is mentioned, because it shows their hollowed out nature of their politics. Pro-Palestinian protesters do to Bernie. I think he recognizes that deep down inside that those people are right and he's fucking wrong, and it pisses him off. Or maybe he just genuinely sees them. Yeah. Or he just genuinely sees them as a
he has the right to you're in charge, say you are evil dude.
What I will say is this: when you go to those rallies where he has 32,000 people showing up,
it's Hasan really an alpha dude, bro.
Blue states all around the country. The people at those rallies are far closer to the truth on the issue of Israel and Palestine than Bernie Sanders himself is, which is why I see that as an opportunity to talk to those people there. I see that as I see Bernie Sanders as simply a person that is capable of bringing all of these people together. And with the exception of American foreign policy, which is very significant for someone like myself, obviously, I see Bernie as a uniting figure that can be used to build a more robust movement to actually get more Americans that are liberal.
So they'll grift off Bernie Sanders
these other ideas. And I think imperialism plays a formative role in that politics, in the politics of the socialist left, of course, because I mean, the alternative argument to aristocracy, like Americans recognizing their class position, but also recognizing their class position on an international scale and how much they benefit from the unequal exchange globally. The alternative to that also is that every dollar spent on global war and the extraction of natural resources and all of that endless bounty that doesn't even translate to Americans' material conditions improving could be a dollar spent directly on fixing the roads, fixing the potholes.
Wrong. This is where the geopolitical analysis is absolutely incorrect. And if Hasan Piker wasn't a coward, I would love to talk to him about this so I could solidify my chud takes. Okay, so he might not characterize it this way, but I would characterize it this way. BadEmpanada is asking why Hasan doesn't challenge Bernie Sanders more aggressively when he knows that his perspective on Israel sucks. And what Hasan says, not in a nefarious way, but I could characterize this nefarious, is that he wants to use Bernie Sanders as a Trojan horse because he already knows that he can popularize the opinion that Israel is bad with the people who already follow Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders is behooven. He's beheld. I don't know what the word is, but he is beholden to corporate backers. He's beholden to individual donors. He's beholden to a whole bunch of people who might be more pro-Israel than they are pro-Palestine. And so Hasan can use Bernie Sanders and use AOC in order to talk to their audience, in order to popularize Hasan's message. Now, you might not characterize that as nefarious, because isn't he just using his free speech in order to convince democratic citizens of what's true about the world? Sure, but if he's a lying propagandist piece of garbage, then that could be bad. Big in Gaming says, what is this about leftist loving Islamists? It's so weird. Helped bring the Ayatollah to Iran and now helping with Hamas. Big in Gaming, I would say that leftists resent American meddling during the Cold War that prevented them from power. And so they use Islamists and jihadists as revenge. Using Iran as a very specific example, there was, what is it, like Mossadegh? I forget the guy's name, but it's the guy, the prime minister who was popular in Iran, who wanted to nationalize the petroleum of Iran. And so I think the United States, along with the Brits and someone else, effectively deposed this guy and reinstalled the power of the Shah, which is their version of the king of Iran. And then the Shah was a reformer in a Western sense, where he tolerated liberal society, but, and you know, like alcohol and dance clubs and all that kind of stuff. But he was also an authoritarian, where if you criticized him or went after his rule, he would throw you into a dungeon and he would pull your toenails out with a pair of pliers. So, you know, kind of mixed messaging on the Shah. Okay. Like, he's rich. He's effectively a king. And if you talk smack about him, he'll pull out your your toenails and fingernails with pliers. But if you want to dress immodestly and drink alcohol and go to school, then he thinks that's cool. So kind of hard to really nail down the Shah. And so what I would say is Hasan and his ilk support the Islamist revolutionaries because it's revenge for the sins of America, attacking leftists and socialists. Zionist baby killer dog catcher. Mr. Bombastic is bringing up a meme where Hasan Piker said that if you are in any way tepidly supportive of the state of Israel, then you shouldn't be qualified to walk dogs in your own community or clean up their poop or catch dogs. Azariah says, somehow the internet made this easier to ignore, me who gets a Gaza ad every half hour. I think that it is more difficult to ignore in the fact that we do get on Twitter, like I'll see random video footage coming out of Gaza that's retweeted onto my timeline. But I also think that if you wanted to ignore it, there's plenty of propagandists who will just tell you, yeah, Israel's doing what it needs to do, especially on the conservative side. On the conservative side, they'll be like, yeah, Israel's doing what it needs to do. Don't look at it. Who cares? Liz Falling Up says, I feel like people don't realize how weird BadEmpanada guy from Australia moved to Argentina as it collapsed into hyperinflation. Why would anyone listen to him about anything? Because he says things confidently. Connor already went through Connor versus male feminist. No, I didn't, Destron. We started with the Hasan Piker memes today. We might not get to it today, but I 100% will do Andrew Wilson versus Oliver on the Whatever podcast, because I think it was quite contentious. Voided Parrot says, I don't know about AOC. She seems to be moderating on a lot of things. For instance, she's pro-nuclear now. Yeah, but then leftists view that as being a traitor to the cause. Big in Gaming says there's a lot more than the 1953 coup as well that isn't covered. 100%. Grassroots says they honestly believe America and Israel are so intertwined that violence against Israel is violence against America. Yep. Liz Falling Up says, Azrai, yep, he's LARPing in Latin America, and is a big thing he clings to is Peronism, which is laughable. Yeah, I think that this dude's schizophrenic, 100%. Kesoko says, the Shah was in our pocket when we put Saddam in our pocket. If the Shah hadn't been deposed, he may never went with backing Saddam. Yeah. Unironically, our support of Iraq came from the fall of Iran. We lost a third of the world's oil supply. And then not only did we lose a third of the oil supply, it was to a hostile Islamist theocracy that turned towards the Soviet Union and China in order to sell its petroleum. Yes. In an alternative history, the Shah was a nicer guy who didn't pull toenails and fingernails out. And then as a result, he was able to maintain power in Iran. And then as a result, the Middle East and North Africa was a more stable place. Agreed. There is an alternative timeline out there where the Middle East and North Africa is relatively stable compared to what it is right now. Let's continue.
A dollar spent.
Sorry, shill time. Like the stream if you haven't liked. I appreciate having dozens of you fine folk at home. If you miss a VOD because you got to go to work, you got to do something else, go to Valor Media Network. You can type in Valor Media Network into your search bar, subscribe over there. You can catch the VODs in like 5-hour uncut formats over there. But then we're also cutting up VODs and we're posting them to the Counterpoints channel where they live on as separate segments. So if you miss a segment, you want to watch it, go check it out. And then on the Counterpoints channel, if you don't have the ability to do a dollar redo super chat, then watching VODs does give me AdSense revenue. I do want to thank Old School again for being the donor today so far. And yes, let us continue with the content.
On a bomb could be spent on educational material for children, better schools, a better ISP system, more robust welfare state. So this is like it's such an easy flip once you get Americans to that point, I think. And that's why I, regardless of my disagreements with Bernie Sanders, still hold some respect for him for being able to put this kind of politics in the forefront in a country like the United States of America, where I feel like before his 2016 run, positioning himself against like the establishment Democrats, it seemingly was a rudderless ship heading down to the
governor of the new British
like necro state that we have become, regardless of Bernie running. But at least now there is like more.
I think SMC did a better
organized in the country, whether it be a more robust PSL movement, DSA, and even more unionization, even though our labor union participation rate is pretty fucking low.
Okay, let me grant. It's just I don't care to argue like a lot of the stuff that you said because honestly, I don't think it really matters. But
1 point.
Okay, the left movement in the US is bigger now. Let's say that's the case. You have the PSL and all these other things. It looks really positive, bright for the future. Does it though? Has this changed anything? Has anything meaningfully happened as a result of this? If anything, things have probably gotten worse, I would say. So maybe me and your idea that the US is the place where something meaningful could happen is completely, utterly, and just totally wrong in reality.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely a more pessimistic attitude, and there are definitely days where I feel that way, but I try not to succumb to that feeling and still push on, knowing full well that like, look, this movement is still marginal, it's still tiny, but it grows every single day, and that's ultimately a good thing because who knows where we might be at. And at the end of the day, the least that the American left could do is like try to get concessions and to try to get America to step away to the best of our ability from the global stage when the decline of empire is setting in.
If you want to get concessions, the best thing to do is to immediately, each and every one of you, break with the Democratic Party already now and get to work. You've had decades to do it. It's probably too late, but why not try? Because what you're doing right now isn't doing anything anyway. So what's the difference? You want a great example? I'm not saying you're not. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be an argument. Everything doesn't have to be a yelling match.
Yeah, I think Bernie probably is the best possible option we had to do that too.
I mean, there was in 2016. I even thought like
your thoughts on the Bronze Age class. I don't have any thoughts to share with you.
He might have been.
I'm gonna grab some water. I'll be right back. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna chair react to Hasan.
Manufacturing, create mass unemployment, but funding the US military. Yeah, that's what they want, dude. It's fucking ridiculous.
There was a coup in Bolivia, basically like that literally no one else in the US was saying stuff like that. And since then, he's just sort of become a shadow of himself. I mean, he's old as well.
Or even running as a major party candidate, running to
like the Democrats chose to lose rather than let him win. It's just a shame that after that, he didn't really do anything. Like, if anything, that experience turned him into more of an establishment guy than he was before. And that's just sad. But I mean, what I was going to say is that look at the Luigi Mangione thing recently. That is an issue that very directly affects many Americans. Many. That guy, I haven't seen polls on him, but I would assume that a majority of people who know who he is and what he did probably have a favorable opinion of him. But it still hasn't resulted in anything. Like, nothing has come of it at all. So there was like a week period where like
Luigi Mangione burned in hell.
And talked about how cool Luigi was and like how the healthcare system is really fucked up. And then everyone just went right back to what they were doing before, and nothing has fundamentally changed. Nothing has really fundamentally been inspired by what was an act that I would have thought would inspire that sort of thing in a country where people, or at least at a time, maybe it's not even the US, maybe it's just the time period that we live in, where people were ripe to actually take risks to try and seek meaningful change. This isn't happening anymore. And it's not just the US where this isn't happening. I mean, I live in Argentina, as you so astutely said. people in Argentina just sort of do the same thing now. They just let shit happen. It's a poor country where people in general have less to lose, and they just sort of let themselves be experimented on like a pack of lab rats. There are people protesting against it. Those people are trying to do stuff, but most people are sort of happy to just sit back, relax, and see what's going to happen as someone tries to do to that country the same thing that's already been done to that country 50 times before and never worked in those times either. I
think part of that is also because of Americans are pacified by the bountiful treats that they have at their disposal. So,
hang on one second, Josh.
And social media as well.
Going to fast forward a little bit while Drew Googles whatever he's Googling. Oh, hold on. Let's see if they talk. If these guys are talking, I'm going to skip past. No offense to whoever this handsome fellow is.
Literally says that he fully agrees with BadEmpanada on all this stuff. And BadEmpanada's official position is that every single Israeli.
Oh, I think they start reviewing it together.
Yeah, absolutely, dude.
Mechanisms of pushback without any sort of like structural organizing on the labor front. That when all of this crumbles inevitably, and I do think it will, we will have is a fascist movement, and that's already kind of happening anyway. So that's my big fear, and that's what I try to. That's why I try to do everything in my power to talk to international leftist movements, regardless of how social democratically aligned they are, or even people like Mélenchon, in an effort to try to get people to organize.
You would know of Mélenchon, right?
Even if change doesn't seem immediate.
Yeah, some of the stuff he's done is like.
What is left wing about anything this guy's saying? Why does he keep referring to the left wing as though he's somehow like everything he's suggesting has anything to do with what it means to be left wing? It seems like they think that whatever the most radical sounding thing they can say is the most left wing and therefore like the most principled or something. It's very odd. It's very juvenile.
And dude, like with Mélenchon is someone who goes so far beyond just traditional left-wing anti-Semitism. He literally basically revived the deicide charge against Jews. He said the Jews killed Jesus Christ. And he's a socialist who doesn't even believe in Jesus, right? So it's just insane. Like, that's how bad Mélenchon is. And Hasan recently did an interview with him, and basically he's saying like he's one of the greatest Western political figures we have. By the way, Josh, I'm doing a pingers on because he was.
Sorry. No offense to these characters, but I do want to get to the content effectively.
The Israeli
radical and insane BadEmpanada is. Like, he literally has no problems whatsoever with killing Israeli kids.
Yeah, it just seems really.
Okay, actually, sorry. I'm not saying that it didn't like ruin the content. I could react to it, but I think reacting to a react is not that great. And we also did kind of pull the most aggressive memes out of it. I'm gonna check and see if there's another copy. Hasan, Piker, a BadEmpanada, but we might have to finish up this. We might have to move on to Andrew Wilson and then come back to this if there isn't a better copy. Although no comment chick has it, maybe. I saw her thing earlier, but I don't know how often she's going to interject.
Let's just play. Going to disappear itself, but bad taste.
Throne, surprisingly enough, is one of the more, I guess, radical. On the issue of Gaza.
Yeah, he definitely has been. I mean, he's not great still. Like, the French government has been so contradictory.
Yeah.
Like, Macron will say one thing and then his foreign minister will say another. But still, yeah, you're right. Like, they're definitely the third best in Europe on the matter. But yeah, I mean, certainly, like, Mélenchon's ideas have certainly had some level of influence on Macron trying to win back popularity. Especially given that the only reason.
Which one am I after? Yeah, Rob. That's one of the other problems too, is people asking for the link to the VOD. It's not just one VOD, right? Noah's, he's reset the stream several times, right? So if you want to watch this conversation, it's actually across multiple VODs. That's part of why I'm putting it together as a.
Yeah, I mean, it just like this. We got to this whole thing because.
And then no comment check. This is no hatred to you. I appreciate you pulling the content, but I'm just going to fast forward it so I can do my own react.
It was like I'm a nihilist.
It's across 4 different VODs. I didn't realize it was that bad.
I'm not naturally a nihilist. Okay, I have gotten my outlook has gotten less and less rosy as time. My outlook has gotten less and less rosy as time has gone by. If you watch like videos that I made 5 years ago, like I made a video like the world needs Bernard Sanders. What a fucking moron I was. What an idiot.
I don't think you were wrong to make that assessment. I think you were right.
Maybe I wasn't wrong.
At the time, I think it was a necessity.
Okay, maybe I wasn't a moron. Maybe I was right at the time. But now it's like we're here 5 years later and everything's only gotten worse. It's so fucking funny that Trump is the president of the US again. I'm sorry. That's so it's especially funny because it's like Trump now is what they said Trump was last time. He's doing all the shit they were fear mongering he was going to do. For me, last time Trump was like a regular Republican who didn't know how to say the right things properly. Like he was way too unfiltered. Now Trump is what they were saying Trump was before. He's totally disconnected from not pretending to give a shit about the Constitution and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's on a vengeance arc.
So it's like,
but they still fucked him up though, because like he's been on this tariffs tip for since like the 80s, and when he started, in the words of Felix Biederman, molesting the money, he got that boss call from Jamie Dimon, and he backed away. Like I think that played a big role in him not even trying to completely undermine global trade in a way that America had envisioned, which was so stupid. I mean, it was so incredibly stupid of him to do that, especially without like a robust manufacturing base. Like, what the fuck are you thinking? But, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally, it's nonsensical. Even if there is some sort of reason between his account.
All right, the closest thing to a point that I can pull from this over the past 5 minutes is probably the fact that BadEmpanada thinks that Bernie Sanders is insufficiently left-wing, and on top of that, it's gotten worse. Whereas Hasan has said that, like, no, Bernie Sanders serves a point because he is the rallying cry for pretty far left-wing Americans. And so I think that's true if you're not a total schizophrenic internet degenerate. However, it's insufficiently left for a BadEmpanada. And so he's going to attack because it is a purity spiral. What happens with the super far left is that you have to be the most ideologically pure, super far left person. And if you're not, then you're just like a liberal cuckold. So that's what's going on right now, where BadEmpanada, in my opinion, doesn't care about efficiency. He doesn't care about political relevance. He doesn't care about, meeting people where they are or pragmatically trying to reform the government. He cares about being the most ideologically pure leftist that he possibly can be. And he, in my opinion, his accelerationist viewpoint only works if you think that what's going to happen is the disconnect between the normie America and the far left is going to become so disparate, and the economy is going to get so bad, and the culture is going to get so bad that people will eventually accept revolutionary vanguard style Marxist-Leninist revolutionary terrorism. That would be my suspicion, is that he wants that because he thinks that the population is too lazy or too co-opted to ever implement left-wing ideology incrementally. Sacred Snow says, we've been for the most part correctly calling out Trump for 10 years. Yeah, the guardrails held the first time and it didn't look as bad, but doesn't mean he didn't try. Supposed kneecapping strat. Yeah, supposed kneecapping strat. Yeah, 100%. And so BadEmpanada is acting like it's a foregone conclusion that everything wouldn't get that bad without people trying. Meanwhile, people have been in the trenches for the past decade trying to undermine the Trump agenda. So yeah, that's actually a really good point, that it wasn't on accident that Trump hasn't been as dangerous as he could have been. Whaleman542 says, Valor Media Network, I'm late to the stream. Why is the original VOD for this combo so hard to find? Are they hiding it somewhere? I think that Noah Samsen broke it up into 3 or 4 VODs. And so as a result, that happened, where the only thing that we have right now is reactions to reactions. We might ambush Steven, depending on whether or not he's doing something boring, just because that might be an okay way to do it. Queeman, lefties are starving. Xander Hall is withering away. That's so rude. Yeah, Yeah, Destiny's not live yet. So when he goes live, maybe I'll ambush him. I'll DM him real quick.
Okay, between his like economic strategy, like trade strategy, it's a stupid reason. But I just think things have gotten like bad enough to the point where a little bit of pessimism is certainly warranted. And a lot of my pessimism, though I don't say it a lot, it comes from climate change.
A little bit of pessimism and a lot of Peronism.
Because we don't talk about it enough, and it doesn't matter if we talk about it at this point. I made a video on climate change, like honestly, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago at this point? And in that video, at the time that I made that video, it was like, okay, we do something literally right now that is so absurdly radical that it'll never happen, or we're fucked. You know, obviously that hasn't happened, and things shit has only gotten worse. That's just like the most pressing, greatest, like most existentially bad example of why one might rationally be a bit pessimistic now. And then, you know, there's Gaza, there is the inaction in the Western world against that relative to previous imperialist wars. Even like, I feel like in a way, at least in Europe, there was even more.
Chat, I'm just noticing that we are at 97 likes. It would only take 3 of you hitting that like button to get us to 100. If anybody out there feels like...
No comment check is very right. Liking is very much appreciated. Super chat's even more appreciated. Follow, subscribe if you're not followed or subscribed already. And I'm going to fast no comment check because she is yapping and I want to be able to yap.
I mean, I never will. I feel there was one argument I made a couple of years ago where like I said, I'd like sort of jokingly said, like, if you're American, just fucking leave, you know, just leave and go try to be Che Guevara somewhere. I mean, I don't.
Wait, chat, is it too late for me?
It's another country that has already long had the sort of repression of free speech that the US is now getting. In Germany, Red Media, this media company that was pro-Palestine, literally got like judicially harassed into shutting down because they reported on like multiple journalists, like links to Israel and Zionist outlets and stuff. And as a result of that, like they got reported to the cops, they got sued, all of this stuff, to the point where like the founder is now facing like a 3-year prison sentence for literally just like calling out German journalists for supporting like Zionist propaganda. And you know, when that is the sort of environment that we're in right now, and that is also where the
What has he got? He's got some snack there. Is that cheese balls?
US is going. I don't even remember what I was initially talking about. I just really wanted to shoehorn that in there because I forgot to talk about my stream this week.
Pessimism.
Hasan doesn't eat cheese balls.
Optimism, I suppose.
Yeah, like
He only eats chicken, and Kaya cooks it for him.
I used to, like, the US used to be so much better on that sort of thing. Now it's, man, what do you even say about this?
Yeah,
But
it brings a little
now
more
it's like-
context. Oh, go ahead.
K-Soka says, that's a girl talking, right? Yeah, I think she's a trans gal, but yeah. I'm sure that's a full truth being told right there. Kelly's was fun, at least. Yeah, so I know everybody hates on the drama streams, but let's be real. You know, I'm happy Steven is still breaking 10 to 15K, but I think a lot of us were way more active in the community, partially because of the orbiting dynamic, but also because we couldn't look away. When Steven was fighting with Lav over like sex stuff or race stuff, it was funny. Like it was cringe because some of the perspectives articulated were very stupid, but it was funny. When Max was saying all the crazy stuff that he was saying and him and Destiny would get into fights, that was wildly entertaining. The Vosh era before that was wildly entertaining. The Molina, when they got into fights on stream, that was wildly entertaining. The truth is people love drama. So now if he's like a pure political pundit, I'm happy that he's still getting good numbers, but it's substantively more dry. And so as a result, orbiters aren't going to orbit as hard when they can't jump in and have fun with the drama. But of course, like if the drama is not funny, it's like serious and messed up, then, you know, people are going to participate less. Sacred says, bro, I don't give a fudge about the drama. I genuinely think Tiny was unique because he tried to teach people to research and think critically, then argue their beliefs. Well, yeah, and that kind of L-shaped Destiny ambush, true. I think that was his strength, but of course, like the drama was the dressing on top of it. Mega Zero says, that's what brought me back to Ethan Klein. Yeah, Ethan Klein became funny again. right? Ethan Klein got funny because he was fighting with Hasan and he was dogging him while also making serious points. Wowman542 says, I will admit seeing Lav crash out on Chud Logic was premium content. It's a vice for me at this point. Yeah, I'm addicted to stupid content, of course. Of course. Turn in sector sketches. Yeah. Well, to be honest, I'm kind of running in. I'll tell you what my plan is, but this is my fault for being a Marine. So my plan as being a Marine is, hey, I heard you wanted to genocide Gaza. What do you think actually should happen? and then we'll take it from there. You know, that's the Marine mentality, is charge headlong into the enemy and just see what happens. I went and told Destiny to come talk to Cotter. He's better content than what he's been doing recently. You know. Anyways, chill. Like the stream, subscribe to the channel, super chats if you got it, watch the VODs if you don't.